Call to order this meeting of the City of Placerville Planning Commission.
Chairs are not in order.
And so let's all rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ask that staff conduct a roll call, please.
Chair Lowry.
Here.
Vice Chair Drobish.
Here.
Member Friend.
Present.
Member List. Present. Member Russell.
Here. Thank you. Next item is adoption of the agenda. Absent strenuous objections, the addenda is adopted.
General consent? Okay.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by general consent unless any commissioner requests a roll call vote, or unless any member of the commission or staff wishes to remove an item for discussion. The reading of the full text of all resolutions will be waived unless a commission member requests otherwise.
Mr. Chairman, I need to request the pull of the minutes, please.
I was just about to ask you that, Mike.
Oh, great minds think alike.
So that brings us to item 5, and I guess the floor goes to Member Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I'm going to direct this to staff. I was going through the minutes, and with regards to item 8.3, which was the Placerville Commons, it occurred to me as I was reading through the minutes, which were very accurate, except that we had received an errata to that agenda item. And I would be less than truthful if I said that my motion, and I can't speak for the other commissioners, but my motion for approval on that project with the condition really failed to take into consideration the errata. We got so focused on the architectural concerns with that project that I'm not sure that we gave due diligence to the errata.
It was also quite late in the evening, if I recall.
And it was, and so I'm a little bit concerned that maybe we didn't do that. So technically the minutes are accurate insofar as they're written, but at the same time, I don't know that the commission considered that.
Chair Lowry, I have a response. The errata was read into the record as a document, so it became part of the public record. If that helps for the commission to reflect the action taken, it was made part of the public record prior to me initiating my staff report. I don't recall whether or not your motion mentioned all of the record. If that's the case, then that could easily be changed by a couple of words.
Right. Again, I think the minutes are accurate, and staff did reference that in staff's report. My point, and really to the commission, is that I'm not sure that we did our due diligence with deliberation with regard to that component. So that's really what I wanted to bring to the commission's attention.
Okay, Member Friend, are you looking for an immediate remedy, or is this something?
Since we are under consent calendar and adoption of the minutes, it probably is not appropriate at this point to do anything along those lines, and so I can move adoption of the minutes.
Thank you.
Before we do, I'd just like to add that I didn't get a written copy of that memo. I did get 2 copies of the letter from a citizen on the next item, so I don't know if I got somebody else's copy of the other one, but I just maybe wanted to note in there that I didn't see it until 2 days later when I heard about it. I went back and looked online and read it. So, yeah, I did not consider potential impacts of that change of language.
So I think at this point, we've adopted the minutes as recorded. I think there's this might be an agenda item for our next meeting. I think we ought to plan on resolving this, down to the individual phrase level to everyone's satisfaction.
Right, and I have some, I'll bring them up at the end of tonight's meeting under
you like.
Commissioner comments. I have some general comments about our process and kind of how all that went down. The only thing I bring to the commission's attention is if, and again, I'm not saying anyone feels this way, but if the commissioner or commissioner felt that, we didn't give that due consideration, then, we could have a motion to rescind a previous action and we could reopen it. So I'm just bringing that to the chair's attention as a point of order.
I appreciate that, and that would also, I think, one thing I am, as I see the agenda in front of us tonight, I'd like to start chewing on tonight's agenda as soon as we can, and but I think we ought to make it a point to remember to go through the exercise that you're recommending, and as we amend those minutes, rely upon staff to make sure that we don't run afoul of any pro forma steps that need to be taken, I don't know, in satisfaction of the Brown Act or Open Meetings Act or anything like that. I don't know if there's a blanket prohibition of fixing it in post-production, so.
Well, I guess if staff's response would be, tonight, you're asked, what was the action taken? And do the minutes reflect the action taken?
I think the minutes reflect the action that was taken. The question I'm raising is, was the action that was taken sufficient in terms of the review, given all the information that was presented to the commission? And I'm just bringing to the staff's attention and to the commission attention that in all honesty, I failed to consider in my motion, and I can't speak to the second of the motion, but I failed to consider the relevance of the errata. We just really kind of brushed past that. And so that's the only thing that I'm bringing up. And I'm sorry to deliberate this with a full house this evening, but I thought it was important to bring to the staff's attention.
If there was a motion to reconsider, would that go under Section 9 of the agenda?
I don't understand the question.
To revisit the vote on that item?
It would have to be made by a member who voted in the affirmative.
Correct.
Okay, then without objection, I'll proceed into item 6. Great. Item 6 on tonight's agenda are those items of interest to the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter not on the agenda that was within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. State law prohibits the commission from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the Planning Commission under specified circumstances. The chair reserves the right to limit the speaker's time to 3 minutes. The chair will recognize the speaker and ask that they state their name for the record. Personal attacks on individuals or comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy will not be tolerated. So at this point, is there anyone who wishes to come forward to the podium and discuss any items not on tonight's agenda?
After the last meeting for planning, and I didn't really, hadn't been prepared for the senior housing center that was approved. After looking at that better, I think one of you at the time said if this came to your classroom, you would have rejected it. So I was really surprised that it got passed by more than 3 2 weeks ago. And it seemed like that project was such a deviation of standards. And I think it's the responsibility of those that are working with those plans to kind of point that out to you. And I don't know if that was done. And I don't know if you made a decision based on enough knowledge when you approved that basically monolithic box that's going to be yellow. And going through your site plan review, which I think it seemed like some of you didn't think you had the purview to critique architecture. And according to your policies, it says that there'll be, this is under, I think, code, anyway. Inside your policies, standardized corporate architectural, which involves the use of materials. Well, let me go a step above. Metonymy shall be avoided, meaning big box developments. Buildings shall have compatible scale to those in the surrounding area. Standardized corporate architecture, which involves the use of materials, textures, facades, colors, roof lines, siding, and other materials and features, is contrary to the city's historic small-town character. In lieu of standardized corporate architectural formula, businesses shall use the following: natural and manufactured wood siding, large timbers, varied roof lines, openings, and facade treatments, brick veneer, and rock treatments, gridded windows, earth tone colors, things that are appealing to the public. And I don't think you looked at that project in that light. And the other issue is, everybody complains about the retail center on Broadway, that it's blighted. And that's why we develop standards, is so that we don't have future blight. And I was concerned about the loading dock, and looking at the plan just quickly, I didn't know if it maintained the standards that are required for appropriate size. And I would be concerned about not having enough parking in case they do convert the use to something else. You have to consider that maybe the project was too large for the size of the parcel, and some of those things should have been addressed. So I hope that in your deliberation of these projects that you get adhere to the standards that you know of, and the things that are a deviation that you have clear knowledge of, so that we can all make a good decision in helping to decide on these type of projects. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item 7, communications.
Staff just received some photos that a member of the public will be addressing as we move forward on the agenda tonight.
And we have those. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Well, okay, that moves us into Section 8, public hearings and environmental assessments. And item 8.1, 2711 Coloma Street, conditional use permit, 2014-06 Heritage House and Garden Bed and Breakfast. And does staff have a report on that?
Yes, I do. The public hearing tonight is a request by Mike Herzog, who's the property owner of the address you mentioned, for a conditional use permit. And the request is to operate a 2-bedroom bed and breakfast establishment within the existing residence on site, and also request the use of the property's approximately 5-acre parcel to conduct wedding ceremonies, catered rehearsal dinners, and ceremony photography. Wedding receptions would take place off-site. Once again, the ceremonies are requested to occur on-site. It's the reception thereof would occur off-site. Estimated number of ceremonies would be 2 to 4 per month between the months of April through October, and 1 to 2 per month during March, the months of March and the month of November. No ceremonies are proposed or are anticipated between December through February. Ceremonial guests and attendees would be shuttled to the site via a multi-passenger minibus transport, and that would be from the Wedgwood Wedding and Banquet Center at Sequoia Mansion, which is located on B Street here in Placerville. Staff is recommending that the project be deemed categorically exempt under CEQA, and tonight's action by the Planning Commission is appealable. It's final, but may be appealed in writing to the City Council within 10 calendar days of tonight's action. The site is in northern northern part of the city. It's adjacent to and has access to Highway 49. The zoning is low density, and general plan designation is low-density residential, and actually has two different zonings on the site. One is, both of them have to do with single-family residential uses. One of them is 10,000 square foot minimum lot. The second is a 6,000 square foot minimum lot. The existing uses on the site include a single-family residential structure and accessory structures, including a covered porch, detached carport, accessory sheds, a swimming pool, a windmill, as well as landscape paths and gardens that pervade throughout the site. Adjacent land uses to this vicinity and to the north, east, and south are existing single-family residential uses. To the west are existing single-family residential, as well as business, professional, and service uses. The utilities serving the site is domestic water well, and a private septic system. Access, as I mentioned, is from State Route 49 or Coloma Street, and the site, based on the site plan submitted, has approximately 100 lineal feet of frontage along Highway 49. And that driveway that goes into the project site is adjacent to and south of the Oak Terrace Road encroachment to Highway 49. The applicant is proposing a compact aggregate surfaced 12-foot wide emergency access from the edge of the existing asphalt located on site in an easterly direction to what is labeled Edgewood Drive and Oak Terrace Road. Edgewood Drive, however, does not extend to the property boundary where the emergency access is proposed. It actually would be connecting to what's called Hillcrest Street, which is located to the south. Hillcrest Street follows in a southwesterly direction and intersects with Highway 49, a little south of the existing driveway. Now, authorization for the request comes from Section 10.4.11 of the zoning ordinance, which is subject to the bed and breakfast ordinance is what it's called. Within that ordinance, there are established criteria and conditions that all requests for B&Bs must conform to. These criteria and conditions include providing proof that the structure to be used for the B&B has historic significance. Parking must be provided at a ratio of 2 parking spaces plus 1 space per room to be rented and paved to a city standard. A sign advertising the B&B may be placed on the property to provide business identification. Its design shall complement the historic building. However, the sign may not exceed 8 square feet in sign area. The B&B operator must also occupy the property. Meals shall only be served to overnight guests, and a business license is required among other criteria. The ordinance does not specify about special events in conjunction with the B&B. Staff believes that wedding ceremonies are reasonably related to the overnight bed and breakfast accommodation use. And if granted by the commission under this use permit, they can be regulated under the conditional use permit request. Staff evaluated the request under these criteria that I described and found that the request would meet or can be conditioned to meet the criteria under Section 10.4.11. The project has been conditioned to address the issues of concern raised by Caltrans and staff relative to site access and parking that justifies additional mention right now. As I stated, the site has a 10-foot encroachment and approximately 100 lineal feet of frontage along Highway 49. Because the site driveway, Oak Terrace, and a driveway serving 2 adjacent homes to the north off of Oak Terrace are all close to one another, staff would encourage, if not require under this use permit, a small address identification sign to visually assist the driver who's visiting the site to know that the appropriate driveway to serve the B&B is labeled. Now, the other concerns relative to access have to do with site distance, and also another comment from Caltrans related to the possibility of having highway backups due to traffic coming inbound and outbound of this site due to the narrowness of the driveway and its 10-foot paved width. Staff has evaluated that and does believe that the city has in its authority to require a commercial encroachment that would involve a 24-foot wide driveway encroachment to State Route 49 and widen that 24 into the site approximately 54 feet from the center line of State Route 49. This is consistent with the city's commercial encroachment standard. Now, depending on where the applicant chooses to place that 24-foot wide encroachment, again, they have 100 lineal feet of frontage. That improvement could result in the removal of trees located on the property owner's property. It could also affect perhaps drainage that the site currently enjoys and exists that's north of the driveway leading into the B&B requested location. The new encroachment and 24-foot width would need to be and remain clear from someone parking within it. Again, the site distance is the issue when you exit the premises, as staff experienced, which was echoed also by a comment submitted into the record as to site distance at the intersection. There are vehicles that, from my understanding, are owned by or are used by the occupants of properties that are immediately to the south of the driveway encroachment. They currently park what it appears to be on the property owner's property, Mr. Herzog's property. And so therefore, staff has conditioned that parking may only be provided as indicated or as conditioned by the Planning Commission. Staff is also requesting a condition be approved that would require the submittal of a revised site plan. This plan would show and become part of the site plan approved for the project that reflects the Planning Commission approved conditions regarding parking areas, driveway improvements, road access, etc. A condition was also added requiring evidence be submitted for staff to staff for review and acceptance as to the parking arrangement between the project applicant and the Wedgwood Wedding and Banquet Center. Staff's further analysis of the request found that the application and its use is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, as this is an infill project under Section 15332 of Government Code. There were two public comments were received for the request, and they are provided as Attachment C in staff's report tonight. Issues raised were site distance, as I mentioned, at the subject driveway. Also, traffic was noted, noise, and the use of the site for wedding ceremonies. To conclude, the staff's opinion that the landscape site with its walking paths, garden areas, mature trees, and the character and beauty of the 19th century home that exists on the site would appear to provide a very tranquil and picturesque environment for overnight bed and breakfast guests and wedding ceremonies. Staff recommends conditional approval of the request. Staff therefore recommends the Commission make the two findings on page 8 of staff's report and condition this request subject to the conditions of approval provided on page 9 to page 11, or as amended or as added to by the Commission. Mr. Chairman, the applicant is in the audience this evening, Mr. Herzog, and that concludes my staff report.
Thank you very much. So to my fellow members here, what I'd like to propose, how I propose we proceed. So if any Planning Commission members have questions they'd like to direct to staff, let's do that. Subsequent to that, let's take public input. if, after the period of public input, if individual commissioners wish to ask someone who provided input to come back to the podium and provide, maybe answer a couple of questions that have come up in the planner's mind, that would be good. At that point, the commission would ask staff a few final questions. The commission will then craft a motion, and we'll have a roll call vote on this and the other items before us tonight. So with that, I'd like to ask the project sponsor and representatives to yeah. So if commissioners have any questions of staff, let's do that first.
In looking at your street standards that was part of our packet, if I'm reading this correctly, it says that you should be able to see from the edge of the pavement 15 feet onto the property. And if we take into account that that is, if I'm not mistaken, a 35-mile-an-hour zone? Okay.
I believe it is, yeah, at that location.
Okay, and so we should sit back 350 feet and be able to see 15 feet back. Did somebody work the math on that one? Because it didn't work when I was standing
Well,
out there.
existing improvements, of course, we can't do anything about. The home that you're referring to would be in the way. Short of realigning Highway 49, which I don't think is going to be the purview of this particular body, we work with the standard that we have, and yes, staff has considered that. We are aware of the structure that's within that sight distance. I'm not sure what else we can do other than providing a wide enough area for vehicles to at least be able to pass one another at that encroachment, and to not allow parking controlled by the property owner within that area, which further reduces sight distance, is why staff has conditioned it accordingly.
Okay. My second question deals with septic system. I was kind of wondering as I was going through this that, you know, to add a bed and breakfast of 2 rooms being a bed and breakfast doesn't seem to be a problem. But if you're going to have wedding parties of 50 to 100, the additional use of restrooms in the house would seem to be a problem, yet that wasn't addressed anywhere in the application. What do you do with 100 people if you're out there for an hour and a half for a wedding? And
Yeah, the commission would have under its purview to require either perhaps, I hate to use the word porta potties, or some other type of function or device to serve that need. That would certainly be appropriate for this body to consider and require.
And was there a survey of trees on the property?
No, there was not. Nor are trees proposed to be removed with the request, other than potentially the ones along the driveway,
Right.
depending on where they decide to put the encroachment.
That was a question I had on if we condition them to widen their driveway to modern specs, we're going to require removing a lot of mature trees. And I just wanted to read a section of the city code that says, the city's intent is not to encourage yards to be destroyed, landscape removed, or the integrity of the neighborhood altered. And another section, maintain historic foothill, small town character, achieve neighborhood harmony, and preserve trees and landscape. So I'm kind of concerned, does a B&B become a commercial venture, thereby requiring a commercial entrance, or is it the events that would trigger the commercial entrance?
No, it's a good question. It's the event portion and the use of the shuttle, which was addressed by Caltrans comment, which I believe is part of your packet tonight. It is not just the overnight accommodation. You could realistically consider that the current property owner, Mr. Herzog, if he had a number of children and all of them had cars, then the traffic generated by each sibling or each child within the home, we have to treat it as a single-family residence. And I don't think the renting of 2 rooms that exist today would trigger the requirements of this commercial encroachment. It is, you're right, it is correct. It's the events and/or ceremonies and the traffic generated by that which trigger the requirement. Excuse me, the condition.
I have a couple of questions for staff, Mr. Chairman. Starting on page 4, Andrew, and you mentioned it in your report, zoning code section 10-4-11 doesn't talk about the activities that can occur as we deal with, say, with wineries, for example, concerts and other events at the wineries. And so I think there's kind of an assumption that with a bed and breakfast, you're going to have little or no other activities outside. Now, in this case, they are asking to have the wedding activity, which, as staff notes, seems to be a compatible activity with the proposed plan, and certainly that makes sense.
Ancillary too. Yeah.
Ancillary too, exactly. So, but do we need to make any reference to other activities? And for example, on page 1, second paragraph, the last sentence, wedding receptions at the Heritage House and Garden site are not requested. Would we also need to be a little bit stronger and say not permitted? Right, you see what I'm saying?
The commission could certainly.
So that may be something we have to consider then.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm just going to kind of run down these. Somewhere in the report, I can't find it right now, there was a discussion of fire protection and fire service access. Was not through the driveway, it was some other auxiliary street, but I can't seem to locate it. If you know offhand where that is, we can come back and visit that. I do.
Yeah, the reference was to, on the site plan submitted by the applicant, it shows,
What street?
yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard.
Yeah,
And
well,
now,
staff's review and actually going to the site, you cannot get onto Edgewood from the gate that they're proposing potentially are shown on the site plan. It actually connects to Hillcrest, which
Right.
is the road. So staff is requesting that the site plan, if approved tonight, the use permit, that they submit a plan for basically perpetuity that shows the actual location of where someone could exit in the case of an emergency. Right
Okay.
now, you cannot get, because of existing improvements,
Right.
homes that exist on
Right.
on Edgewood, you cannot get on Edgewood.
all right,
as it
so
currently is.
to my point on this, and this might have to go back to the fire department, I was surprised that in the fire department conditions, they did not talk about road width that would accommodate 2 vehicle fire apparatus and 1 other vehicle in case there had to be an evacuation. It's a fairly heavily wooded area,
Yeah.
which is part of the attractiveness. And if we start thinking about the fire safety escape component, so maybe just a note to staff that you need to make sure that the fire service has taken that under consideration.
I believe they have, and I believe after speaking with the applicant, and he can confirm this or not, but I believe the result of that emergency access is after communication with the fire district.
Okay. On page 5, we talk about the signage. There is no sign plan submitted. Is that coming back to commission for approval?
It's entirely up to you. Staff believes that due to the very specific nature of, under the criteria for bed and breakfast, that if it's the purview of the body tonight, they can just leave it up to staff to
Okay.
review and approve.
All right.
It's entirely up to you.
So let's just point it out for my
Yeah.
fellow commissioners. Page 6, second paragraph, criterion 15 permits a bed and breakfast, et cetera, et cetera. It says this provision has not been routinely enforced by the city. And my question to staff is, do we really want to put something like that in the record? Do we want to make us?
It's a fact.
Okay. Well, it may be a fact, but I'm not sure it's something we want to say. Second paragraph, criterion 14, and this also goes to Commissioner List's, one of his concerns, and frankly, a concern that I have as well. Accepting, of course, the city has said, well, we'll be happy with the standards that we're proposing with regards to site distance and the road. I don't understand why the city would want to take that risk. Why wouldn't we require the modifications, improvements that Caltrans is recommending, and then leave the risk with them? If something happens there and bad, then it seems to me the city has a lot more exposure by having set the requirements only at the city level as opposed to the state level.
Well, it's my understanding the city has control over land use outside the right-of-way of Caltrans. So we.
No, I'm not questioning
Yeah.
our authority. I'm asking the question, why take the risk? Why can't, because we could defer that risk to the states. We followed the state's, recommendations on this. In this case, if we're going with city recommendation, it seems to me the state can say, you know what, we suggested they do this. And so, again, I'm just raising the question, why the city would want to take that position.
The commission could echo the opinion of Caltrans if they wish.
Okay, and then is there? Oh, this was not apparent to me until I actually got into the applicant's application itself, and so on page 10, number 5 under, I guess these are planning division. Number 5 says the applicant should provide proof of agreement with the off-site parking facility. In this case, I believe it's going to be the Sequoia.
Yes.
Or update the site plan to show the parking facilities. And I think, I didn't understand that, and I kind of struck it out, but it does appear to me that there is the possibility of modifying the site plan to add more parking, because they have the acreage, certainly, to add more parking so everything could happen on site as opposed to have to use the Sequoia. Is that the plan? In which case it would have to come back to us.
It
and
would.
then that raises all the other issues, but it's still a possibility, and that's why it's worded this way.
It's a possibility. There are constraints to do that, however.
Right.
Perhaps it's worth noting now that if private vehicle trips instead of the shuttle, the need for the driveway width, the full length, the city would need to look at that from the perspective of an increased number of cars potentially using that driveway simultaneously. There's an assumption made, I think it's a reasonable assumption, that because of the shuttle's use, you don't have those vehicles who would be privately driving to the site other than the occupants, residential, and the overnight accommodation folks. The increase in traffic could open up the city's review of is the driveway its full length in adequate width to accommodate, in case of an emergency, two-way traffic. The city might want to see a widened driveway,
Right.
the whole length, or make improvements as a one-way. I'm just speculating.
Sure.
But you see kind of where I'm going.
I do.
We'd look at it probably a little bit differently than we have in this particular case, because the shuttle is really proposed for majority of traffic during event periods is going to be done
Okay.
by that.
But that condition 5, it seems to me that's fairly important, and this conditional use permit would only be applicable so long as they had that agreement, and if that agreement were revoked by, say, the Sequoia, for example, that would have a direct impact on the permit, right?
It would.
Yeah, okay, so I think, again, it's just notes to Commissioner. My last question, I promise. And again, Commissioner List brought this up, so I was wondering, actually I have two, sorry. I'll just go on record saying I am a little bit concerned about the parking capacity, because even though we have the shuttle component, let's say you have the rehearsal dinner or even you have the wedding itself, it seems to me you're still going to have logistical support such as caterers and photographers and florists and paparazzi and all kinds of other things. And I'm a little bit concerned about the adequacy of the parking. Again, I just throw that out to my fellow commissioners for consideration later. And then with regards to septic capacity, is there a formula? Like if you're going to open a place, say on Main Street or something, isn't there a formula for occupancy and you must have X number of bathrooms or some other capacity that we could use as an objective an objective requirement, because I think Commissioner List's comment is germane.
I'm not prepared to answer that question. I don't have that metric in front of me.
That might go to environmental health?
Yes.
Okay. All right, no further questions of staff. Thank you.
Okay, now, let's proceed to the public input portion of this agenda item. And,
The applicant is in the audience tonight.
right, my understanding is the applicant, you mentioned the applicant was here, yeah. So it's probably logical to start out with the applicant then. So I'd like to invite the applicant and sponsors to join us at the podium.
Hi, how are you doing? I'm Mike Herzog.
Hi, Mike.
So basically, I just wanted to go over my intentions and clarify several things. We've been going through when I purchased the property in August with the intention of doing a bed and breakfast and ceremony site. We've obviously gone through several steps with issues with parking and other items. So the shuttle is something that is more of something that we found that would be much better for the property. It's a licensed driver. It adds to the safety of people coming on and off the property. My wife is the general manager at Sequoia Mansion, and so they've been looking for a ceremony site for 2 years now, because their ceremony site is right across from the cemetery and right on that road. So it was a cooperative thing, but I can't emphasize enough. We're talking about, and we've also reduced the number of events, everything like that. It's for select events. We're talking about no more than one during the busiest time per weekend, lasting no more than 2 hours. That includes shuttle time coming on and off. No loud music, no dancing, no food, no alcohol. This is just for the ceremony portion. We are proposing it's a bridal bed and breakfast, so we want the brides to stay there for the weekend, and that is the concept. But photographs would be done separately, not as part of the events. And so we do have a large amount of parking, several large driveways. We've had the shuttle companies come, do turnarounds. It is not our intention at all to add a parking lot behind. There's 2.5 acres behind. And it's not our intention to do that for several reasons, some that were mentioned. But basically, the property has always been used for city events. It was originally called City Gardens. It had events dating back in the Mountain Democrat to 1870. And the Bennetts, who lived there for 40 years, they had wedding ceremonies and events there all the time, and through their church, but obviously they weren't permitted, and that was a different time then. But that's not at all what we're intending, and we don't want it all to be a hindrance to the neighborhood. It's just, these are all things that are during the day. It would be one day, much less noise than a birthday party or anything like that. This is all on the front lawn. It is 5 acres, and it's central to the property. It's completely surrounded by trees. There's one neighbor that can see our property in terms of where the weddings would take place. And again, this isn't music, drinking. It isn't the reception. It's just for them to come and get married. There's a 200-year-old walnut tree, and we believed it would be a perfect place to have wedding ceremonies, and with no noise issues. These are all during the day. So that is our intent. It's not at all to violate any noise restrictions or anything like that. But and in terms of the bathrooms, we had already intended to have porta potties. They aren't there they're technically probably just there for most an hour, but that's already my intention.
Now you've made mention of rehearsal dinners also?
Correct. That's it's just a request. So it's something we can offer to the people staying there. The goal is to get the bride and groom to stay there for the whole weekend and obviously increase our income. It's a bridal suite with the option of a second room at some point, but we're starting with one bridal suite. And so rehearsal dinner would be like a small dinner, and this would just be during certain parts, only times where weather permits. There's nothing allowed inside the house other than the board, the people staying there. So the bathrooms won't be used, people won't be going inside the house. And it would basically be, they would cater it themselves, like a small dinner outside on the lawn, just like you would if you had a barbecue or a dinner out on your lawn. It would just be part of, to go with what we're offering. So photography, the option of having catered dinners like the night before. So small items, and all of them within daylight hours, none of them late.
Do you have, as a parent to two recently married daughters, I know rehearsal dinners and some of these other things take on a life of their own. So do you have some kind of a plug number for how many people do you roughly expect to be at these rehearsal dinners? I mean, I realize it could be like as few as 6, but up from there, right?
Sure.
Sorry, let me squeeze in here. Hi there. Hi, Commission. My name is Carrie Goldman. I'm the general manager at Sequoia Mansion. I also happen to be married to Mike and live on the property as well. I feel a little bit probably better informed to answer a few of the questions in terms of the rehearsal dinner portion as well as the paparazzi, because we did 130 weddings this past year at Sequoia Mansion. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but it has become a really popular wedding site, and obviously a lot of people coming to Placerville that eat at restaurants and stay at hotels here. So we're really excited about the project. I agree with the rehearsal dinner part that it can turn into a little bit of a fiasco for a family who maybe isn't so well-versed in the wedding world, but usually rehearsal dinners are between 15 and 30 people. That's what I've found in my experience. We do a lot of rehearsal dinners at Sequoia Mansion as well. And it often is something that seems to go hand in hand with weddings, where people feel comfortable with the people that they're working with, they enjoy the site and the experience there, and they want to spend a little bit more time beyond the day of that wedding where it just goes by, you know, in the blink of an eye for them. They're able to relax a little bit more and talk to their family and friends. In terms of the paparazzi aspect the day of the wedding, we actually find that most of the vendors arrive early and leave before the wedding actually begins. Florists, you know, because it would only be ceremonies and not actual receptions, you're not dealing with caterers, you're not really dealing with bakeries, you're dealing with basically the florist, if she or he is going to be doing some of the setup, and the photographer, who usually comes in one car. So we don't anticipate the extra people involved with the setup of the wedding to really have an impact on the parking or the amount of people there. Obviously, I would be involved primarily as the person helping them set up, and having knowledge of both properties, I think, would really make that flow a lot more smoothly. So that's sort of my answer in terms of that aspect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a very thorough answer.
I should have brought her up at the start.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Come on,
your
that's a rookie mistake,
consideration.
you know. So that's all I have. So if there are other members of the commission who'd like to pose some questions, please do so.
There was comments about, since you won't be having receptions there, there wouldn't be any alcohol served and things like that. I can't imagine a rehearsal dinner without some wine perhaps. And in one of my previous lives, I owned a winery, so I would think that you would really want to have some refreshments at the rehearsal dinner.
Sure.
So, but we need to maybe talk about an upper limit of how many people might be involved, you know, whether it's 20 or 50 or whatever, but I would assume that you would want and desire to have some refreshments with your dinner.
Sorry, I will just stay here from now on and not sit down again. I hold a catering license at Sequoia Mansion. Most caterers will hold a license, and they're able to serve obviously food and beverage off-site of whatever location that they operate out of. Again, that would be up to the commission whether they would want to regulate that or, you know, make that a condition that we wouldn't be able to do that. I agree with you. People like to enjoy wine. I just feel like it's one of those things, if it's a small amount of people, for the neighbors, the impact would be the same as them having a barbecue and having friends over drinking beers. I don't really see it affecting them negatively.
But you could, I mean,
We're not attached to that.
it is, They are daytime, as we wouldn't be able to do it at night. So because they would all be outside on the lawn, it would be up to daylight hours. So most of the year, you're talking about 3, 4, 5 o'clock, sometimes 6, 7. But I mean, that's as late as they would go. But obviously, it's up to your judgment to restrict them to any number, or to beer and wine, to wine, or to no alcohol at all.
And I presume that the shuttle is going to be used in support of these rehearsal dinners too?
It can be.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody is hosting something with drinks, get them off your property, with a designated driver, I guess, would be a consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the shuttle is a real key component to this project, and we work with a great company called Baja Limo, and I really, really trust them, and they're extremely professional. But again, really, it's the same as having a rehearsal dinner at any restaurant here in Placerville. You're not going to necessarily say to your adult guests, well, we're going to provide a shuttle because we don't believe that you're not going to be able to have a glass of wine and then drive home. Again, that would just be, we also find that in terms of the amount of cars, most people come as couples, if not more than 2 or 3 people in a car. So even if it was 30, you're looking at probably 10 cars, which we might have for one of our children's birthday parties.
And there is sufficient parking.
I was sitting here imagining people dressed up for a wedding and stepping across the lawn to an outhouse, a porta potty, whatever you want to call it. That doesn't excite me at all.
Yeah, they're used all the time.
Actually, there's really nice ones that you can rent now that even have sinks in them. I'm not sure if you know that, but a lot of big sports complexes use them. And again, as Mike said, that's something that we already had planned on doing because I really don't want anybody in the house beyond that. But yeah, there are quite nice ones that you can rent now. And you can rent them either as a day use or you can rent them for a season. So I anticipate it being something, maybe a little step up from just your standard green.
I would hope so. So I had a couple questions. The first one is the use of the carport. Are you using that for vehicles? Would it be used?
It isn't on our plan. It isn't one of the ones that for the guests or us, actually. It's additional parking.
Okay.
So there is lots of additional parking. The ones we have on our plan are just the ones that we picked as the best places to do for the overnight guests and for ourselves.
Yeah, if I could interject, I think the Bennetts used that for an RV, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, the Bennetts were several of them were just at our house because Jerry Bennett passed away a couple weeks ago. So, they were able to tell us a lot of things that we didn't even know about the property, and a lot of the family spent time there. So we learned a lot from them while they were here.
I had a chance to walk the property the other day, and very, very nice, beautiful piece of property, tucked away, very nice. One of the questions I had when I was thinking about the leaving Highway 49 to go onto the property, had you considered having it a one-way where you would come in off of Hillcrest, come down and out onto 49? Was that thought approached?
I can kind of explain what I've considered and what happened when I switched, because our initial plan was to have a parking lot and have cars come there. We switched to the shuttle, and that's even gone further. I don't want to disrupt the neighbors, and it's not, if you see that exit, it's, and the fire department I have talked to, and it's an emergency exit only. There's plenty of space with how we've designed it for them to get out, but we don't want to disrupt the neighbors. So these are a small amount of events. We're talking at most 4 a month, no more than 1 a weekend, and just for a few hours. So during that time, it's a specific time that we can control the traffic. So we're not gonna, so whoever is there at the property, when the possibility of the shuttle comes in, up to 4 times, it's about 25 people per shuttle, we won't allow cars out. So there isn't that possibility of a backup on 49, because the shuttle will just be coming in and no one will be coming out. It's our driveway.
But still, leaving 49 onto your property at that corner, you get people are coming north, getting ready to make a turn to the left for the curve, and you have people coming around from the north around to the left.
That's why we picked a shuttle. I mean, because these are highly licensed drivers, and that's the safest way. I understand that it is definitely not the safest curve. We deal with that as residents.
We agree with you. I mean, talking to Scott Bennett, who visited our home last weekend, you know, he was telling us, you know, back in the day, I mean, it was basically a logging road. I mean, Highway 49 was built to be a highway. Unfortunately, it's a 2-lane highway. But there are other businesses operating right across the street from us. And, you know, we believe that, yes, the corner is, you know, it's not the most optimal corner, but at the same time, you know, as Andrew was saying, it isn't really our fault that the highway was designed that way. I mean, you go down a little bit and the corner turning onto B Street is basically a blind corner. I take my son to school every day. You can't see people coming or going when you're about to turn left or right there. I mean, it's a historic town, and again, you know, the home is a historic site, and it was always used as a gathering place in Placerville. And we would like to continue to see it be used that way, and help it maintain its historic, you know, integrity. That's really our intention.
Well, I'm sorry.
I would just, I'm concerned about the vegetation, the trees along the south side, the seasonal creek on the other side, and you start widening that to 24-foot through there, and it's going to disrupt something. And I think that takes away the character of the property.
We agree with you.
Which is, and he mentioned one of the things that I found in terms of disrupting that, and that is why it's my intention with, whether it's with Caltrans or the city, I'm happy to do. There's a perfect area for an outlet for someone an emergency for someone to pull out. I'm perfectly fine to pave, and actually that's my intention in working with the owners of that house to actually. And they're actually working on this now. I've talked to them in terms of putting parking back behind the house in a plan and us helping with that. Because we're already under that property where they all park right in front of their house, including a large portion of all 3 of those streets is our property. So that's an easement that they park on. So we're working with them now. We want to do the best thing. It's a value to us as well to move those cars. We're the ones coming out of our driveway where that's the most dangerous turn. So that's something that we're obviously going to work on both for our guests' sake and for our own sakes.
Okay.
I do have, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please don't misunderstand my questions to staff or to you
Not at all.
as opposition to the project. I'll retain my poker face until the very end. The use of the term paparazzi was somewhat glib, but I do appreciate your expansion of that because it caused me to have a couple of other questions. Could you, let me just start with a few of these. Could you throw out to the commission your planned hours of operation? And probably most importantly, what would be the latest that you would have a rehearsal dinner and or a wedding?
Weddings usually, at Sequoia, we only do 2 slots. So they can either get married at 11 in the morning, or they can get married between 5 and 6 in the afternoon. Wedding ceremonies are generally half an hour. So the 2-hour time slot that we're really talking about is people coming and going, arriving and leaving.
Sure. Okay.
And then for the rehearsal dinners, we would leave that, I think Mike would agree, up to the commission in terms of deciding how late that you would want us to go, or allow us,
It couldn't be later than dark because they're on our front lawn.
right.
Okay.
And we don't really have very much lighting. Yeah.
It's
Okay,
very-
so that would be a question for like, for example, the Sequoia, I think one of the conditions is they can't have events past 10 p.m. In your case, we could either use 10 p.m., which would cover everything, or we could say until dark. And so you're okay with either of those?
Completely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Don't give up anything you don't have to up front, just, can you give me a number for max capacity?
Oh, in terms of ceremony?
It doesn't matter, what would be the max capacity for any one single event in terms
Oh,
of
well,
number of
we
people?
think it's much more than we've said. We actually think it's upwards of 250 people that could easily fit on the lawn, but we've restricted it to 100.
Okay, so restricted to 100. I have this vision of my big fat Greek wedding, Okay? The wedding part I'm not so concerned about because you have the shuttle component. But for the rehearsal dinner, not everyone coming to the rehearsal dinner are going to be overnight guests, either locally or the Sequoia doesn't even have lodging.
No.
So what's the plan for those folks? Because we don't have the space for all the vehicles and whatnot. And in that case, you'd probably have to have that catered. You'd take care of that more than likely, but there's still logistics. So I have generally comfort with the wedding side because we have the shuttle component. I have questions about the rehearsal dinner side. What's the accommodation for those folks?
I agree with you. To be honest with you, I feel like Mike and I have proposed the rehearsal dinner just as, I don't want to say a side thought or an afterthought, but more that sometimes guests just enjoy being, somewhere so much that they ask to do that. I don't think that either of us would be upset if there was conditions put on it in terms of the amount of people, if it was catered.
I think you've given due diligence to the transportation plan and parking plan for the wedding side.
Right.
What kind of due diligence can we do for the rehearsal? Because it's a different structure, right? I mean, again, people not staying locally, or would they park at the Sequoia? Would you be running the shuttle for the rehearsal dinner? A good answer would be we'll manage the rehearsal dinners the same way we're going to manage the weddings, and we'll make that a condition.
That would be staff's perspective, and we would encourage that.
Okay,
yeah.
so I bring it up because it's not specifically in the plan or in the report, because I'm not sure that you'd really contemplated that entirely.
We had not.
I can see wheels turning.
Well, my wheels are turning because I know that when I do rehearsal dinners at Sequoia, sometimes people have small families and there's 10 people there, which means if they have a minivan, they're coming in 1.5 cars.
Okay.
Which is less than we have combined between the two of us.
Right, okay.
So then,
Right, so
I agree with you.
So all of our conditions generally deal with the maximum
Right.
side.
I
So
would rather you condition the number of people but.
which if it's possible, we don't know. if
Okay,
that is
so
possible
for
versus-
rehearsal dinner parties anticipated to exceed 20 people,
Correct.
you would use a shuttle?
Over that, correct.
You're talking, but I want to see her.
She never agreed with me.
Yeah, but I think she's.
I think that would be fair as long as the type of shuttle was not necessarily restricted. I mean, if you
Doesn't have to be
because there's different
commercial.
sizes.
Doesn't
Okay.
have to be commercial. I'm not requiring that, but they have to be shuttled.
Shuttled. Okay,
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
you're okay with that. All right, so 20 or more requires shuttling, as opposed to individuals showing up and
Mm-hmm.
parking. I'm going to assume that what you had in your plan, first of all, the alternate parking option, you're not going to pursue anymore. Is that what I heard you
Correct.
say? And so that also negates as Caltrans said somewhere, an applicant directing traffic. That's not applicable either.
Correct. We did that only for safety purposes.
Okay.
So that was something that they, in discussions with them, that was a more complicated than we were
Sure.
trying to be. We were trying to be safer, and
Okay.
it made it more complicated. So the safety of the shuttle itself is what we've decided to do.
Okay. I totally concur with Commissioner List's concern about changes and loss of trees and vegetation. We have to balance that with safety, and you've got to balance that with your liability. The last question, seriously. Do you contemplate, when you have a wedding, will you have other guests not affiliated with the wedding party staying at your location?
No.
Or will you reserve that location for the wedding party folk?
Yeah, the idea is to do something unique where not only are they able to enjoy such a beautiful, historic home, but they're able to stay there, basically just them and have the privacy involved in that.
Okay.
Right, we've looked into a lot of bed and breakfasts and the idea, and it's what we wanted to do and have a historic home and do this, but they struggle as just bed and breakfasts. And
Okay.
I believe there's only 2 left in the city of Placerville. There was several more.
Right.
And it's happening all over the place. So it's part of that concept and the necessity for the wedding receptions and a different concept that we've come up with.
And of course, the partnership with Sequoia, I think that it makes sense.
It does, absolutely. And I also concur with Commissioner Russell about the general desire, but not necessity, for the imbibement and adult beverages, including beer. He always forgets to mention the beer side of the house. Thank you.
I probably should address this at the beginning, because the off-site parking, first of all, I want to encourage as many B&Bs in our historic homes as we possibly can. It's sad that we've lost a couple. And just looking at, under a conditional use permit, there's a list of things you can do under a conditional use permit. And I always thought a B&B was on there, but I have it printed out here, and a B&B is not allowed under a CUP. So I think we need to address that.
Yes, per the section I referenced in the staff report. 10.4.11.
Use is permitted in any zone?
No, it's a conditional use under that section.
Yeah, and 10.3.4 lists a whole bunch of things, and
10.4.11,
10.4.11.
specifically the bed and breakfast ordinance.
Okay, so under the B&B rules.
Yes.
But under 10.4.4, parking and loading, section B, the required parking shall be provided on the parcel or contiguous parcel where the use is located. And the reason I asked if it was commercial and non-residential, commercial or residential use, because it says for non-residential uses, the required parking may be provided on a parcel no further than 300 feet from the boundaries of the parcel, providing that the parcel is under the same ownership, within the city, in the same zone, or in a less restrictive zone, and that no major thoroughfare lies between the use and any of the required parking. So to me, it seems like the proposed parking at Sequoia cannot be allowed under 10.4.4.
But could be permitted under this use permit at your discretion.
Okay.
And that's where we bring in the shuttle.
Correct.
And that's more for, I believe, for walking distance and understanding that. It's the walking distance from that exterior, like, if we arranged for one of the businesses that isn't open on the weekend to use that, pay them for their parking that's close by to us. It would be that walking distance that would be involved in that. And in our case.
And crossing 49.
Crossing 49, or there's several different options that we looked at, but that, from what I understand, it was for more for walking.
In the report somewhere, it mentioned the guest house. I think it was the newspaper report. So a studio, a guest house.
There's a playhouse.
Okay. Question was there a bathroom in there?
Oh.
That could be used.
I mean, I don't know where that came from, but that's something that we talked about.
It's in the newspaper article section that's part of our
There's a
packet.
beautiful old playhouse. It's a large size.
Yeah.
But no bathroom.
And we had talked
No.
about, no.
It's actually like for children to play in.
Okay.
It looks like a little miniature of the house.
There's no plumbing to it, correct?
There is not.
I wish there was.
Yeah.
And then what's the width on your driveway? The choke point right before your property opens up, what's the width there?
Oh, it's probably 16, 18 feet. You mean
Okay.
where it opens into our main? Which part are you talking about? Are you talking about at the end of the driveway going?
Just
where-
as you start to come up to your house and your property
Oh, okay,
widens
yeah.
out.
Oh,
What's the
I'm not in-
narrowest part there?
I'm not,
The narrowest or the widest?
The narrowest.
Well, the narrowest part would be the driveway, which is 10 feet. And then it actually forks right there, and it circles the entire lawn. So you come up the driveway, you can turn left, and it circles this way, and you can also come right, and it circles around that way as well. So,
and if you
That
go
would be
straight, it
very
goes up
wide.
into
I
the
was just
property.
wondering about the property line width at the narrowest point of your driveway, not the paved sort.
Oh.
The property line. Because if we're requiring 24 feet and your property line's 20, it doesn't work. Anyway, it's not on there. Do you know where the 54-foot off of Highway 49 would end up on that driveway?
No, staff has not scaled that.
Okay.
And it's from the center line, correct?
The city standard, yes, is from the center line. I believe the Caltrans wanted 50 feet from the edge of the pavement.
I could tell you on that map pretty much where it is. I've measured it out.
And then you mentioned something about 130 weddings at Sequoia, but they don't have, I guess they don't want to use that as a wedding site?
no, we do use it as a wedding site. One of the issues is that As the popularity, in the site grows, so do the weddings. And we have a small patio off to the right of Sequoia, which can hold about 100 people. But not every bride wants that small flagstone. All brides want, this big dream of a big, gorgeous view and this huge, beautiful tree. And unfortunately, the front lawn of Sequoia basically looks out on a cemetery, which I don't know necessarily says, let's start a new life together. Right, and of course, it's also right on B Street.
And there's kids there all the time.
That we have issues with the kids from the high school who hang out there and smoke. Anyway, it's a long story, but basically, when you're showing the property to a bride, you may be showing it to her at 2 in the afternoon when the high school is getting out and all the parents are parked there and kids are walking through the cemetery. It doesn't exactly say, let's get married. So for 2 years, basically, myself and other, management involved in Wedgwood has been looking for an alternative site that we could use where we could basically, say you can have your reception at Sequoia, but have this beautiful site to get married at. And, when Mike and I found it, it just seemed like that marriage just, excuse the pun, just came together, and that.
Yeah, it is a beautiful site, and I think once everyone gets a taste of what you potentially have to offer, that 130 weddings at Sequoia are going to move right over to your property, and you're requesting 25.
But,
So-
the funny thing is, Wedgwood is known for being affordable, which is why we do so many weddings. Not every bride would be able to afford it,
Okay.
quite
So
frankly.
you'd be elite in your,
Right, so we include a ceremony site in the packages that we sell at Sequoia, which some are all inclusive, some are not. And obviously, it's much more affordable to get married on site. It's for that bride that's looking for a little bit of a step up in experience and is willing to pay for it.
okay, thank you.
I believe staff has a question?
Yeah, staff has a question of the applicant, if I may.
By all means.
Yeah. Related to the comment made earlier and the relationship that Wedgwood would have with your property and the overnight and the event ceremony, could there be, in your opinion, any scenario where at Wedgwood there is a wedding going on and a wedding unrelated to at your function, at your property? The reason I'm asking the question is because that's where your parking would be located. And I think staff's concern might be that there may not be adequate parking to serve both uses
Right.
at the same time.
No, we plan to only.
Okay, thanks for
Yes,
clarifying.
yes. I mean, maybe if it was a friend or
Yeah.
something that, that's a different story, but no, we plan to do it solely through Wedgwood and use that partnership to our advantage.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the applicant? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think we'll probably have some further questions, so we'll ask you to join us back here again.
Of course.
a little
Thanks for
later.
your consideration.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so are there any others attending the meeting tonight who would like to discuss this conditional use permit tonight? Come forward, sir.
Hello, my name is Hal Sherry, and my wife and I live pretty much immediately across from the property in question, where they're requesting the conditional use permit. We've been in our house. It's a little old Placerville house built in the mid-50s. We've been living there for 31 years now.
May I ask you?
Yes.
Where your home is located, generally, are you on the west side of Highway 49? Are you somewhere along Hillcrest or one of those areas? Where would you say?
We're on Crestview Drive, which is off of Hillcrest. And as I look at the parcel map here, these numbers are a little bit fuzzy, but this is the map that I'm looking at on the back of the notice
Yes.
that we received. And right where that black arrow comes in and falls on the middle of the Herzog's property right there, we're the second piece of property that's actually touching that arrow and just to the left of it. It's really hard for me to make out this number on here. This is our property right here. That's, yes. Yeah. And so I'm going to try really hard not to, ramble on and stay focused here. And I just want to express some of my concerns about the proposed project. We've been good neighbors to all of our neighbors in the area for the last 31 years. In February of 1984, my wife and I and our small child moved to the house that we still live in now. We moved there from downtown Los Angeles, and we're delighted to leave the big city. And for the last 31 years, have really been enjoying our peace and quiet on our small street here in Placerville. I'm not, while I understand the Herzog's desire to use the income generating potential of their property, I'm not sure if they realize how much sound carries at that particular location. They would probably be amazed to find out that I can actually hear and understand conversations that they have in their driveway. It's not that I'm an eavesdropper, believe me, I'm not. It's just that it's incredible how sound carries in that location. Part of the reason is because it's really nice and quiet. But the other reason is that the lot that's immediately next to ours and the one that borders the Herzog's property, I believe is owned by the city of Placerville. And it comes at a fairly steep slope up to our property. And the sound just comes up that slope like smoke from a pile of leaves burning in the fall. It's unbelievable. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I can actually hear conversations from that driveway. If I happen to be sitting in my backyard, it's really something. The Bennetts were great neighbors. Lived a stone's throw from them for, I guess, approximately 30 years. They were generally quiet, and so were we. We don't play our music loud. We don't have loud parties. We did start to notice, I would say, well, it's in the recent past that there were a number, I don't know how else I can describe it, but there were loud, large parties coming from the property that is now requesting the conditional use permit. And my wife and I kind of...
Do you have a time frame for when these parties took place? Can you tell us approximately? Was it after the Bennetts moved out? Is that what you're saying, or?
I was not aware that the Bennetts had moved out until we recently saw something in the local paper that said that Jerry Bennett had passed away. And they were always very quiet neighbors, just like us. And I didn't even realize that the property had changed hands. But we definitely noticed that in 2014 in particular, there were a number of, and I just don't know how else to describe it, but there were loud, large gatherings of people. It sounded very festive. And I said to myself, wow, those Bennetts must have a really large extended family, because it sounds like there's, 50 to 100 people down there, and they're having a great time. I'm not saying that it was out of control, but it was unusual. And believe me, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that the sound really carried right into our house. And if I was to sit in my backyard, I mean, I may as well be at the party, because that's the noise
Well,
level.
you're probably not going to get drink service from there, but, I noticed on the topo map that I have, such as it is, it looks like you're a fair bit higher than the property to the north of you. So that may be the nature of the situation. Have you been following along the discussion here about proposed times and durations, times of day and durations? I haven't heard any proposal for all-nighters. It sounds to me like the activities would be per force brought to an end at sundown, because they don't have exterior lighting or whatever it is they need to have these things go on after dark. So what I'm not hearing is there a proposal for a constant round-the-clock use of this property. So do you have in mind some sort of bandwidth of time that noise is absolutely unacceptable to you, or?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that, I think that I'm a very reasonable man, anyone who knows me here in Placerville, where I work and et cetera, knows that I don't expect, all kinds of special treatment and things like this, but I want to answer your question directly. As far as the parameter about dark, in the summer, it frequently stays light till 9 or 9:30 easily. Where I started to get a little concerned is when I thoroughly read the notice that I received, and at first I thought it was that well, so I have a number of concerns. It says estimated wedding ceremonies, and then, the point was made with the last speakers that as the popularity of this location grows, and it certainly is bound, that's bound to happen. In 30 years, I actually only went over to the Bennett's property once in the 30 years. I mean, we just never bothered each other. There was one time when their electric fence was malfunctioning, and it was emitting a very loud, high-pitched squeal. Can
I get you back
yes,
to
yes.
What times?
Okay.
We have a proposal. We have a fairly and I understand you may not have had an opportunity to read this conditional use permit, but it lays out several conditions in terms of how often these events will happen, within what time frame. I take your point that it stays light later in the summertime. So it's not my sense that that these events would be extended to go until nautical sunset, just because that time was available. I think these things are going to happen in their normal course. So, but again, that's my speculation. What I'd really like to drive to here is what when can, in your mind, when can this just absolutely not happen?
Well, sir, of course, we wouldn't be too excited to see these events extending into the, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight, time frames, because like anyone else, our home is more or less our sanctuary from the work week. The big reason why we moved to Placerville was for the peace and quiet. Whenever we have visitors to our house, which is not frequently, the first thing they always say to us is, "Gee, it's so nice and quiet up here." And I'm the first to agree. It's a lovely location. We're at the end of a small cul-de-sac. We're close to town. We've enjoyed.
So a few minutes ago, talking about the way that wedding events or wedding ceremonies are scheduled at what we all call the Sequoia here in town. I understand that there's an 11 o'clock slot and a 5 p.m. slot, and that in general, those ceremonies run 30 to 60 minutes. So that implies to me that worst case, there would be a ceremony extending possibly until 7 p.m. Assuming they use the same scheduling methods. I've asked you a couple of times to give me some metrics, and we've gotten a lot of anecdotal stuff. And in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up in the next 90 seconds so that other people can speak to this issue.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect to the speaker, if we could perhaps, and in the interest of time, simply request a list of concerns, and then the commission can take those and we can deliberate.
Can we still give him his 90 seconds?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Oh, without question, but if we could, within that 90 seconds, if we could just get a list of, clearly, hours of operation and noise are two concerns that I've noted.
Now, the rehearsal dinners could actually run later than that, because they're not subject to the time frames of the weddings. I would be astounded if immediately following the wedding, there's not a celebration of some kind. That usually occurs. I'm not down on weddings, don't get me wrong. My wife and I will be married 36 years this year, so I'm not down on weddings. Some of my other concerns are fire, traffic. The one time that I did have to visit the Bennetts, and I drove on the little driveway that went to their house, I made a mental note that driveway struck me as being terribly narrow, and I didn't even know if a fire truck could get up there.
Well, as I'm certain you heard earlier, the local fire agency has surveyed the approach to and the other secondary access on Hillcrest as it happens. Caltrans has let its feelings be known with regard to the interface to Highway 49. The city has standards for these kinds of things. I want to thank my colleague for his suggestion, and what I would encourage you to do is to develop a list of your concerns and submit that in writing to Planning Commission staff as soon as you can make it happen, and we'll proceed on that basis. And I want to let you know, I understand how you feel about relocating. My wife and I moved up here in 1992 from Los Angeles area, raised our daughters here, raised them both to honorable adulthood, and we love this place. So I understand your concerns. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who else would like to come up to the podium?
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Michael Kirk. I live on Oak Terrace. I live due north of the Mr. Herzog's property. I have pretty much the same concerns. There were parties in the past. I do believe they were from different owners. It was the parties that this gentleman here was referring to, I believe. And I could sing and dance myself to this music that was just out in my backyard if I wanted to enjoy it. But this was probably at least a year ago since the last time or so, since the last time I've heard that. Same concerns. That sound carries. All these single-family residences that surround this parcel are about 90% of them are elevated above, and that sound just carries. So it's very easy to hear. So my concern is, and I know we're estimating 2 to 4 a month. If I was a businessman, and I know this is a condition, we're putting limits on this. I believe that's what's been said here tonight. We're going to limit that to 4, I believe, if that's been, or that's still to be decided. My concern as a neighbor is signing up to be neighbors on a Saturday that I like to enjoy outside of my property. Sign up to be neighbors with 100+ people, and everybody coming in and going out. I don't see. I know there's obviously a benefit for the Sequoia folks. I don't see, and I have no problems with an occasional party. That's not what I'm saying here. But sign up for every weekend, essentially, every Saturday, and now a Friday night. It sounds like as well, possibly with the rehearsal dinners, Friday night and Saturday during the day at 11 or 5. I'm wondering if it's going to ever be both 11 and 5. Sign up as a neighbor to hear and take that on a regular basis, and that's essentially what I'm concerned here. Music will be played at the ceremony. There has to be some sort of music, I would assume. I don't think I've ever had a ceremony without some sort of music. There's businesses across Highway 49 that we've talked about. I don't think those are really something here that's really a concern to me. Those are insurance companies. There's no traffic there. There's minimal traffic here, minimal people that visit those. A concern that I have, and I don't know the answer to this, is the fact that this is a venue. Is this something as a property owner that I'm going to have to, would I have to let others know what happens on my neighbor's property if I ever went to sell my home in the future? And is that going to impact me? That's a huge concern. I don't know what the answer is to that.
I don't either.
But that is a concern for me. I have 2 homes due north, 2 lots right next to each other with 2 homes on them. So that is a huge concern for me.
Anything else?
I have one more comment, and I just kind of would say to you gentlemen, would any of you members want to buy or live next door to a wedding venue? I just kind of throw that out there to you. This is the situation that we're potentially in here, and I don't think I'm not going to answer for you, but ask yourself that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Greg Brown, and a month ago my wife and I just moved into the large property adjoining the Herzogs to the north. And the very reason we bought that property was because of its tranquil nature. That was a word brought up earlier. And I propose that wedding ceremonies, as lovely as they are anything but tranquil, and that rehearsal dinners, as we, excuse me, as we all know, very readily get out of hand. And one of my further concerns is that after the reception is over off-site and the bride and groom return to the house, will they invite a number of their friends to continue the celebration? Because that happens all the time too at weddings I've attended, that the bride and groom don't immediately take off on their honeymoon, that they continue the party all night long. And I'm just wondering what sort of control there might be at night on the property after the official ceremonies are over. Are we inviting extended parties to happen outside in a beautiful location? And I admit it is wonderful, and I wouldn't mind getting married there myself, but it's the parties that really concern me, and the noise. And again, they're right at the bottom of an amphitheater, and that sound is like coming out of a trumpet. So those are my concerns. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. We've been in the neighborhood for almost 20 years, and I have to agree with all my neighbors.
Can I get your name, dear?
Tanya Thomas.
Thank you, Tanya.
We actually can see their yard, their backyard, their pool. We see people playing. It's great. It's a beautiful neighborhood. But I agree, we can hear everything all the time. And then my question is, how do you guarantee people aren't going to
You
drink?
direct your questions to me.
Sorry. How are they going to guarantee that there aren't going to be late night parties due to alcohol and late night visitors? That's what I want to know. Because we have kids, and I don't want to, I don't want to like lock up my house, me in my own home, just to be quiet and enjoy my own home.
Okay, thank you.
That's it, I agree.
Hello, my name is Marta Sorensen, and my concern is that there may not be alcohol in the property, but it doesn't stop them from drinking at the Sequoia before the party and then going over there when they already have had some drinks. The noise again, I know we heard the noise, and like the neighbor said, she doesn't want to close the windows. We are close to the high school, and it's a lot of noise, and the high school goes until 11 o'clock at night. We have to close our windows, turn our radio up so that we don't hear the noise, and the neighbors are going to be even closer to us. I've known the Bennetts for approximately 27 years, been at their house many times, not big parties, never heard of any parties. Belong to the same church. Never heard of a reception being held at their house. If people happen to go late to the party, are they just gonna drive to the place and forget that there is a shuttle to the party? And so then we're gonna have the traffic again. That's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm going to break it up a little bit for you. My name is Allison Lopridge, and I've run the Glenmorey Country House Bed and Breakfast for 14 years now. And I don't know anyone here, and this is way more grueling than I remember it being. It is grueling, a grueling process for them to come and apply. I remember that, and I much would have rather stayed in my seat because I've been on the other side of the NIMBY issue recently, and I know what it's like to have something come to your neighborhood. In my case, it was a drug and alcohol rehab next to my home and inn. And so I have a lot of sympathy. Again, like I said, I'd rather have stayed in my seat. But I have to tell you, I gotta support them. And I'm excited about this process for them and them bringing this to town, because for the first time in a long time, someone is doing something to put heads in beds in Placerville. I mean, this is going to bring people here to stay. And if you approve their rehearsal dinner process, people are going to stay all weekend. Not with them, with me, with the Shafsky house, with the Carey house, with the Seasons Bed and Breakfast. And we would be, honestly, they've never seen me before in their lives probably, but we would be thrilled to be on their shuttle drop off and pick up, because we actually could walk to them. It's a longish walk, but we're right, at the end of Coloma Street, as is the Shafsky, as is the Seasons and such. So, and just as an aside, this whole process we're going through with them to get this approval, there is all these bed and breakfasts in Placerville that are advertising on Airbnb and have not gone through this process with you. They're not historic inns. They're not collecting TOT tax. They're operating, and I can show you on my iPhone 10 of them right now, So just keeping that in mind, they're doing this the right way, right? I wanted to bring that up. I have done weddings that they're explained as they are explaining. About 7 of them, about 10 years ago, using the shuttle system. We used the top level of the parking structure in Main Street and had people walk or shuttle up. Had no problems, never had a complaint from the neighbors, and we did the whole shebang, like the whole thing. So it's sounds scarier than I think it ends up being. I feel badly about the fact that I do believe that they're saying it isn't an amphitheater and sound probably carries. However, I will say this, they own this property, and if you want to be isolated by noise from other people, you kind of have to be the one that owns the property, right? I mean, if you want to have that pocket of quiet around you, you can't insist that other people who own property maintain, I've read that the city would like to have more multi-unit structures built within the city limits to address the population issues of the low, very low, and extremely low, income things. These folks could parcel up this and put on multi-unit, dwelling places right up to the property lines, and that's not what they're asking to do. They're using this to keep it in its intact state as a beautiful park-like. I mean, I'd be fortunate to look at it if I lived next to it. I think. Let me just check my notes and see if there's anything. Oh, the concerns that there are valid concerns that the neighbors are bringing up. But I think I read in their application that it said that their CUP could be revoked if it caused problems to the neighbors. I mean, that is a protection built into this whole thing for the neighbors, that Herzogs, I'm sure, have to they have to manage their weddings in a way that does not cause the neighbors problems, or else they could get their CUP revoked. So there is that sort of protection built in for the neighbors in the area. Been doing this a while. I'm going to sit down now. If you've got any questions for me, feel free to ask. Sometimes you guys bring up a question and I'm back there going, oh, I know the answer to that, but I can't jump up, right? So if you've got anything you need to ask, I'm here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hello, you guys. I'm Dottie McKenzie, and I'm the florist to the Sequoia Mansion and David Gerard through Wedgwood. And Wedgwood is the best thing that's ever happened to this county, bringing in a lot of money. I also live in Apple Hill, right in the middle of Apple Hill. And all of that's allowed 4 months out of the year. It is loud, it's obnoxious. I can't get out of my driveway, but it's allowed. I stay in my house, been there for 26 years and would never leave it. So I understand what the neighbors are saying, but where we live in El Dorado County is becoming a major attraction to the rest of the country. And what Carrie and Mike are trying to do is to preserve the history of this town. They are using that beautiful home. It's going to generate a lot of revenue. And I'm sorry that the neighbors don't like the noise, but they said they can hear the high school. That's pretty much 9 months out of the year. But they can hear the noise. So we have to adapt because change has come. I remember when I moved into my house, 26 years ago, Apple Hill wasn't like what it is now. It's massive. If something happened to me, I couldn't get to the hospital. And if there was a fire, God help a Camino, because we're done. So they shouldn't be singled out for trying to do something that is actually a huge asset to our community.
Thank you, Dottie.
Hi, I'm Sherry Woodford. I live on Edgewood, and I also can hear their children in the swimming pool. I'm sure they're a very nice family, but I have concerns about the noise also. It just funnels right through to all of us on Edgewood and beyond. I have a couple questions. Does the rehearsal dinners count as the 2 to 4 per month, or is that something totally separate and they can have that anytime they want? Also, can the 4 a month be increased in a few years or whatever, when they said that brides will love to go to their place and have a really nice wedding and stuff like that. So also, I love trees. I don't want any trees taken down if they don't have to be. And that's my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Lishman, and I live on Oak Terrace, and I've lived there for 31 years. And prior to, I think it's better that the commission takes a break if someone needs to have a break rather than not hearing what the audience members say. So I'm going to sit back down until he comes back.
Okay, folks, we're on a break. Please be back here at 5 minutes of the hour.
mean, they were aware of it, obviously.
So this next one you've seen before. Yeah. Yeah, with the amount of fall. You couldn't do it.
Okay, and we're back. So I'd like to invite Kathy to come back to the podium.
First of all, I'd like to say that, well, I've lived on Oak Terrace for 31 years. Prior to that, I lived in a Victorian house on Cottage Street, which is closer to Highway 50. And when we sold that house to move where we moved, the person that was buying it wanted it to be a bed and breakfast, and she went to the Planning Commission prior to the close of escrow to discuss it. I think it's pretty presumptuous to assume that you're going to buy a home and then automatically be able to turn it into something else and have it be connected to another business in town. It looks good on paper. It's a beautiful piece of property, but it's not out in the county. I don't know how many other pieces of property that would hold weddings and rehearsal dinners would be in a city. It looks as if on the map that the city provided that there are 24 parcels surrounding it, just right next to it or just across Edgewood, and that's an awful lot. And I do not like the term NIMBY, and I think that people who live in an existing neighborhood have a right to feel that the impacts that impact them can be addressed by their planning commission and their city council. There are mostly single-family homes in the neighborhood, and I hope that you'll be sensitive to the impacts that this project has on the surrounding quiet neighborhood. And I don't live as close to this property as many people do, and I know what it's like, and I know up on Edgewood how it is a bowl up there, and up on Crestview. And it's not about being a NIMBY. There is a use that already exists for this property. When they bought that property, they knew what the use was. A B&B is very appropriate, but a wedding and event site to me is not. For weddings, a lot of the questions have been answered, but a shuttle, one of the things, I don't know if you really understand how bad it is where that driveway comes and Oak Terrace comes, and they're just a few feet apart. And Oak Terrace, 2 cars cannot pass at that intersection. If you're coming down the hill and somebody wants to turn onto the street, you have to either back up or the person out on Highway 49 has to stop and let the car at the stop sign out. If there's a garbage truck going down the street, it's a ridiculous street at the end of it. And I've said that for a long time. It's probably narrower than it's probably not much more than 10 feet, and two-way traffic goes on that street. A shuttle, I guess they have tried it out and had it made sure that they could turn the corner. But even for weddings, there'll be delivery trucks. The wedding party itself, are they going to be shuttled to the wedding? The photographer, the party rental, people rent certain things for their parties. And nothing has been discussed about music, what kind of music. And porta potties at this beautiful historic site to me seem totally out of place. And they have to be delivered and emptied by a truck that accesses that. The rehearsal dinners, my concern was each person driving there. And I'm not assuming that this should be approved because I really don't believe it should. There was mention in the staff report about 100 frontage feet on Highway 49. I cannot get a clue about where that is when all I see is a 10-foot driveway coming out. And now they have something in that little ditch area because I've seen on a foggy night a car actually going into the ditch or cars turning onto that road thinking it's Oak Terrace and having to back out. But so the intersection is terrible. I guess I can assume that 2715 and 2717, the two houses that are right there on the corner, one is really almost on the street, that they are not part of that 100-foot frontage. So I'd like to understand where that 100 feet is. And the fact that Oak Terrace and that driveway are just really on top of each other. And the B&B on Bedford that was mentioned in the staff report that apparently advertises weddings but doesn't have the right permits for it, it is next to the Shakespeare Club. It is not in a neighborhood. And in back of it is Pleasant Street. So it has the Shakespeare Club on one side, Bedford on the front, and Pleasant Street on the back. It's not surrounded by as many homes as this area is. And a 24-foot wide driveway going to one existing historic home seems so out of place in this city. There has been no good traffic analysis that I can see, no design of the driveway, no discussion of the little creek bed, no discussion of the sign or address the location, and I don't know why it just can't have a address. It said the addresses, the numbers should be 12 feet. I don't know why it just can't have an address. I have no idea why it needs to have a sign when it's set so far back from the road, and an address would help people find it that need to.
We're closing in on 5 minutes. Would you care to summarize?
Well, the first person talked a lot longer than that, and I'd like to be able to say my comments.
Do you have a way to summarize them?
I want to comment on the staff report. You're asked to make the finding that this request is deemed essential and desirable for the public convenience and welfare. Furthermore, this request as condition provides a service to the traveling and visiting public with no detriment to the surrounding properties, and I disagree with that. It seems that this is becoming an extension of the Sequoia, and for the benefit of the Sequoia and to the detriment of the existing neighborhoods. It seems quite self-serving to purchase the property with the intentions of turning it into a wedding site. I think there are too many loose ends and unanswered questions, and it's premature for any approval other than just as a bed and breakfast.
Thank you. So what we're going to do now, in the interest of the good of the order, is I'm going to ask and I will, ma'am, you'll have an opportunity to speak. I promise you. We need to do a little housekeeping here. We had another applicant planning to come before us today, And this item is taking a little longer than some might have predicted. So I'm going to ask, first of all, I'm going to ask with unanimous consent that we can, for the next 5 minutes, table item 8.1 in front of us, do a little business on the remaining agenda items we're about to hear about, and then we will, in the fullness of time, immediately return to the issue at hand. So would the representative, okay. I asked. Andrew?
So
Yeah,
we need a
I
motion to table?
Yeah, the chair asked for unanimous consent. Was there debate on that?
I would ask for a move to table of item, what are we on, 8.1? Whatever the item is.
So there's the motion.
Where's my agenda?
And then we'll have a second, and then we can debate this.
Thank you, sorry. So I'd recommend that we, I'll move that we table item 8.1 until discussion of items 8.2 and 8.3. Give me a second.
Okay, motion dies. So again, without objection, I'm going to ask that we table this item and then move forward. And then once we've completed this business, we take this 8.1 up again.
Mr. Chairman, so you didn't want to second my motion for at least sake for discussion? So I just moved, I made a motion to move to table item 8.1, which is item we're discussing.
So, do you have a motion?
I made a motion to move to table. It dies for lack of a second. All right, then we're not going to move to table, and I think we resume with item 8.1. Thought there was a strategy. I'm confused.
If staff can address the commission. You have the representative of your next items on the Forney Road Hotel, and he would like to request that the commission consider continuing the item for 2 weeks. You should
point of
allow
order,
him- allow him to make the formal request, and then you can take action on his request.
I concur. However, we are in the middle of a public hearing. Point of order, do we not have to make a motion to suspend what we were doing, i.e. the public hearing on 8.1, before we could even consider this request? We're in the middle of a public hearing on some other item. That would be a regular order, I think.
It would be appropriate to table, yes.
That's all I'm suggesting. But I guess I'm confusing.
Well,
Upon conclusion, you could take it off the table to go back and
Then you move it back from table and we can finish it. Correct.
I'd like to move that we table item 8.1.
I think I'll second that motion.
For
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
For discussion first, is the meaning of suspending this just to let the next applicant not sit here and then not get to discuss his item, send him home, he's coming back in 2 weeks? Is that
In a
what we're
nutshell,
after?
because we're really great guys.
That's staff's understanding of what the purpose of the
Okay.
tabling
And my
would be.
original motion was to address item 8.2 and 8.3, which is the same applicant, if I'm not misunderstanding, that we could then allow them to come back.
Okay, motion in a second.
Call the question, please.
Member Friend.
Aye.
Chair Lowry.
Aye.
Vice Chair Drobish.
Aye.
Member List.
Aye.
Member Russell.
No.
Okay, sir. The floor is yours.
I'm Jim Fisher, applicant for items 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4, and I'd like to ask the commission to postpone these items for 2 weeks.
Motion to postpone items 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4 per the request of the applicant.
Second. All those in favor so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. For the record, who made the second? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Chair, I'd like to move from table item 8.1.
Was that a motion to move it?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move from table item 8.1.
I missed a move.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Call the question, please. I guess all in favor.
All in favor would be fine.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
No official
We-
verbiage that we're back to 8-1.
We're back.
Because the chairman was just about to announce that we are reopening the public hearing, I think.
Hi, my name is Jeanette Kramer. I, along with almost all those neighbors, I moved out there when I knew that property. Oh, by the way, I live right where the emergency exit would take place on Hillcrest. So when I looked at the property, my three questions were, is it quiet? Is it private? Is it at the end of a road? Because I have dogs and I have a quiet lifestyle. And all three answers were yes. And so then I went and I looked at the property and I just loved it. And I don't have TV service, I don't have internet, I don't have any of that because I spend my weekends out in my garden, out in my yard. And I don't want to be listening to wedding ceremonies, I'll be honest with you, every weekend. She had mentioned it's no more at a rehearsal than it would be for her son's birthday, but he doesn't have a birthday every weekend. And I work 5 days a week. I go to bed at 9 and I'm up by 5. I work in El Dorado Hills and my weekends is all I have. And the noise travels. So with everybody else's consensus, I'm not okay with the weddings. I'm okay with the bed and breakfast, which is what they proposed when they moved in. They even came and introduced themselves and said, that they might have a wedding now and then. Yeah, okay, we can deal with that. Yeah, people have barbecues and people, but we're neighbors and we all enjoy listening to the camaraderie of family and out. But I don't want to listen to a wedding every weekend. And it's not just, it's going to be every weekend because it is going to be a popular spot. And it's not just the wedding event. They say 2 to 4. So we can pretty much guarantee that our weekends are going to be with people in our backyard, basically, people that we don't know. I have dogs that have become very protective. They know my neighbors. They know when to bark and when not to bark. They're going to bark the whole weekend because there's going to be unfamiliar voices that they don't know. That's not relaxing for me. My first thought was, when I heard this, I'm like, I just bought this thinking I'd die in this house. Am I going to have to sell it because it's no longer providing that country atmosphere that I like? One of the ladies talked about we need more bed and breakfast. Fine. We're okay with 2 rooms as a bed and breakfast. It's the wedding events we have a problem with. People that have the bed and breakfast downtown, the other ones that she mentioned, all those people bought homes on main streets. They knew they were not going to be quiet, private little country-type atmospheres. We have a very country, very quiet lifestyle back there, and all of the neighbors respect that. And I just don't think having, just like one of the others, do you want that in your backyard? Every weekend, you have no choice. My gardening is my sanctity. You don't do that inside the house with the windows closed. And the other thing that, after listening to everything, the thought of cutting down big, beautiful trees to improve a driveway, and the people that talked for this all benefit profit-wise. These are our homes. These are our investments. This is where we live. This is not, just a weekend thing now and then. And I just think it will change a quality of life that we all have out there. And I don't think it's a good idea at all. And my other concern is if it does go forward, you talked about making the one-way street if you can't get it wide enough. So you're going to come in on 49 and you're going to exit 30 feet from my front door onto a one-way street that there is no room for 2 cars to pass. Our neighbors and other people I heard on the other street, you have that problem. You got to back up for the garbage person. Ask my garbage man every Wednesday morning when I'm leaving, he's got to back up or I've got to back up. And you're talking about having that as possibly a one-way street. The house is on the one side, drop down, the property's dropped. The road could not be extended, and then the other property shears right into it. It's a one-way street all of a sudden for us too. I mean, I'm not seeing this as a positive for our community. You know, bed and breakfast we're all okay with, but the weddings, you know, they talked about how wonderful and beautiful for the bride, for her experience. What about our live experience? Our everyday lives, every weekend? February through December, or, you know, December through February, no weddings. Well, great, it's raining usually anyway, so, but anyways, that's all I have to say.
My name's Philip. I live next to Jeanette, right by the proposed.
What's your last name?
Kaufman.
Thank you.
And I share the field, and my property is where the emergency exit will be. And I've got to talk to Mike. He's a great guy. He lets my chickens and my dog trespass on his property every day, and you know he's really cool with it. And I really, it's not my place to say how much noise and you know somebody can make on their own property or anything. But my concern is the possible one-way street onto Hillcrest, the possible traffic. I know you say it's an emergency exit, but does it have to remain open when things are going on? Will people be tempted to leave there, whether or not it's an emergency or not, you know? So I'm concerned with our teeny little dead-end street turning into a one-way, you know, loop or exit for somebody. It's my real only concern about it, so just want to state that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Friend, and I live on Oak Terrace. And my husband and I, we have lived there for 26 years. With you Bennett's for that much time, and never was that a problem if they had any gatherings, because we didn't see cars parked on any place disturbing anybody. A couple of weeks ago, we had a car parked on Oak Terrace, and the police had to come and leave them a note saying they had to move because, like the other neighbors are saying, it's impossible to go through without having to move over to the driveway for someone or back off, whatever. It's hard to. One concern I have is that if you are going to a wedding and you have to go and park way by the restaurant, Sequoia, and have to be brought in, if they don't have any time, they will be parking wherever they can find a place around there. Oak Terrace is right there. That would be the easiest place to stop. That's why I'm concerned about the parking. Who is going to be reinforcing that they don't park there? You know, they will be told where to go, but like I'm saying, if they come around, there's no place, or you're too late, you stop wherever you can find a place. That's really my main concern. I know I have to say that I have nothing against the new people there. They have the right to move to Placerville and enjoy what we have. Like I said, we have lived there for 26 years. And I have to say again that the bed and breakfast doesn't seem to be a problem because there's plenty of space. But when you have a wedding as big and we are on that road, we would be blocked. I guarantee you, people will be parking there because we have experienced that with someone just coming to visit and they park there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Roxanne Brown, and I live at 864 Oak Terrace.
Roxanne, go ahead and pull that mic down, so there you
Sorry.
go, right where you need it.
Our property is adjacent to theirs, and I don't think, or at least listening to the staff report, I didn't hear them speak to the noise issue, and I was wondering if there were ordinances within the city limits on how much noise is allowed, if that had even been addressed, and will it? My other question is this the only hearing about this? Will you be deciding for this or against this evening, or is there time for the residents to perhaps appeal or my understanding is that the first notice that came out about this, the new owners simply stated that they were having a B&B. When I first heard that too, I thought, oh, that's wonderful. We could use more. That's a nice thing. But to have a weekly event 10 months out of the year until sunset during the summer, the impact is going to be major. And the noise issue, I would invite all of you to come and sit in our backyard and just listen to kids playing about 100 feet away, and it sounds like they're right next to you. So you'd have to imagine that 100 times. It's just too much for that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Going once, going twice. Thank you all very much for your input.
I have a question for staff. Does the city have such a thing as a special event permit?
Yes.
So if a B&B was approved, but the items such as a wedding ceremony, a reception, a rehearsal dinner could all have to go through a special events permit? Is it possible?
That permit is done as a ministerial action by our Director Rivas.
But that there is a mechanism in place that potentially could.
His decision on such a request, yes, could be appealed to the Planning Commission. And subsequently, that decision could be appealed to City Council.
Are those would you have to apply for one for every event?
Yes, you would.
Unless there was I'm just wondering about it, creating a trial period for the non-B&B. I don't have a problem with the proposed bed and breakfast uses. We have 2 parking spots, 2 rooms, enough pavement. They wouldn't have to widen the driveway, wipe out the trees. They could start with the bed and breakfast. And I'm just trying to figure out some way that we could let them have some events, let the neighbors analyze it and come back, and we'll discuss again the impacts and what needs to be changed. Something, throwing that out there.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just follow up with staff on that question. So going to the staff report, Andrew, on page 4, zoning code section 10-4-11, to quote the staff report, does not specify special event uses in conjunction with a bed and breakfast establishment. Staff considers the request for wedding ceremonies on site to be reasonably related and ancillary to the overnight use. Mm-hmm. So does that mean that a special use permit would be required if they wanted to have a wedding ceremony and or a rehearsal dinner there?
No, I thought it was implied based on my staff report,
well,
the information that the request includes these special events with this use permit.
Correct. So what I find interesting is we've gone through this and lots to discuss. Essentially, the application before us this evening is for a bed and breakfast. That's the action that the commission has to take. And we're going to discuss all the ramifications of that. Now, the applicant has added this component of regular, anticipated wedding ceremonies and rehearsal dinners as part of it. And so it would beg the question if that actually is material and substantially different from what would be otherwise simply ancillary related activity. That's a question we would have to debate. But I think it's important for us to keep focused on what we're being asked to decide. I have other comments, but I want to yield to other commissioners first to go down kind of the list of things that we've heard this evening. I just wanted that clarification.
But we could condition bed and breakfast uses to restrict other potential events.
So as I read it and taking the staff report document in its entirety, I highlighted the sentence that staff considers the request for wedding ceremonies to be reasonably related and ancillary. So my interpretation of this is our action implies the approval of these wedding ceremonies unless it's the sense of the commission to carve out those exceptions with specific language. And That's just how I interpret that report.
Staff agrees with that assessment.
If staff could just comment, it is within the purview of the commission to approve the application as requested, deny the application or requested, or modify the application as requested. So you can certainly carve out any aspects you feel are, not harmonious with the neighborhood or what have you. You could approve just the bed and breakfast if that's the desire of the commission.
I've got some just general comments, I guess. To answer one of the ladies' comments, this doesn't necessarily have to be the last opportunity for people to address this. If it's approved, you as an individual or a group from the neighborhood could appeal it to the city council. If it's not approved, the applicant can appeal it to the city council. So this does not have to be the last step in the process. It would seem that about 99% of our conversation tonight has been about the, not the B&B so much, but the weddings, the not receptions, rehearsal dinners, cutting trees down, traffic. When I left the site, after I visited, that access onto Highway 49 is a little scary. It's you can't see very far. We could spend a lot of time and write a lot of conditions about noise levels, about the frequency of events, weddings, how big a group is before you have to have a shuttle bring people in for either a wedding or a rehearsal dinner. And it seems like, we could spend a lot of time and write a whole lot of conditions. And the policing of it, someone asked about that also. It's a conditional use permit, so if they violate the conditions, whatever conditions we choose to adopt, and if someone brings that to the city's attention, that, I think, puts into action a review or whatever of whether they're addressing the conditions or not. So I kind of think, and I'm beginning to feel that there's some valid concerns about the noise. The noise seems to be the number one concern that I've heard from, 7 or 8 people out here. If we can somehow deal with that, fine. If not, I'm not sure the project needs to include those activities. I really don't.
Mr. Chairman, another question for staff, if I might. Would it be possible for us to bifurcate the bed and breakfast component from then the wedding component? Could we create it that way and deal with them separately? One way, it seems to me, Pierre or Andrew, whoever wants to answer this, one way we could do this is we could approve the bed and breakfast and then with a restriction that they cannot have the weddings there on a regular basis. They can only be on an occasional ancillary basis, as in the staff report. So that's one option we could do. Or the other option, of course, we could certainly deny the bed and breakfast, but I think we'd be challenged to find findings with that. The third option, I'm wondering, is it possible for us to bifurcate, put the wedding component over here to be considered separately, approve the bed and breakfast? We'd probably have to put the condition of no weddings and then consider the wedding component separately. Could we do that?
I think the request is for both components.
So what they would have to do is if we pull the wedding out, they'd have to file another application, come back with a request to conduct the weddings in the manner that they're proposing this evening. They certainly could do that.
Yeah, we would probably treat that as a modification to the use permit.
Okay, so that's another option. And the only reason I bring that up, again, is for the commissioners to know what possible actions we might be able to take this evening. Another question I want to ask staff, there's no consideration of a traffic study. I didn't see any traffic study data, whether it's strictly just the bed and breakfast or the bed and breakfast with the wedding component. And is that just because staff presume that there would be minimal traffic, there'd be no impact?
Minimal to the extent that it's being The bulk of the people arriving would be done by shuttle when an event is occurring on site.
And so certainly if it's just the bed and breakfast, it's even less than that, so there's no reason to consider.
Yeah, I tried to create a parable earlier this evening when I discussed the use of the rooms as they currently are, their bedrooms, and if they were to be used by the property owner's children, and they had vehicles. From staff's perspective, it would be a push as to an increase in traffic from the use by the home, as opposed to, not opposed to, but there would be hardly any difference, I think, from a traffic standpoint, from the B&B side, in comparison to just the residential use.
Okay.
Yeah. A difference, obviously, with the events.
What distinguishes, and I think I know the answer to this question, but what distinguishes the proposed, just the bed and breakfast component, what distinguishes this from a home-based business? Is it the fact that you're actually going to have people coming to the site? As, for example, they wanted to open up a cabinet shop or a cement factory or something on this fairly large parcel in this area. I mean, home-based businesses are allowed so long as you do not deprive others of the fair use and enjoyment of their property. I mean, that we do that. That is allowable. And so how is what this is being proposed distinguished from a home-based business?
It's distinguished based on the bed and breakfast ordinance that
okay,
the city fathers and mothers adopted years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's the difference.
Okay. But beyond that, it would be very similar in a lot of other respects to a home-based business if it wasn't simply for the code delineation.
Yes, as the member is aware, having you operating a business.
Currently operating a home-based business, right.
Yes, there are limitations for visitation, advertising the business, things of that nature from a home-based business side that would not be permitted.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the issues that were brought up this evening, and particularly with the noise, are certainly legitimate issues, and this commission has an obligation with this project, as we have with others, to see if it's possible to mitigate concerns that are raised. I do recall that when the Sequoia restaurant itself came before this commission, there were concerns expressed by, and I'm speaking really to the commission now, that there were concerns expressed about the Sequoia and their hours of operation, the amount of noise, and so on and so forth. And I think in some respects, and that's in a mixed neighborhood, we have to consider that. I'm struck by the observation that there already is a certain noise level, certainly with the high school and the middle school in the near vicinity. It sounds like, you know, from the surrounding parcels, everyone can hear everything that's going on. What's deficient on the site plan, by the way, that there's no specific delineation of where they plan to actually hold the rehearsal dinners and or the wedding ceremonies. I heard discussion about the walnut tree, and that certainly is located on the plan on the grass lawn, but it isn't specifically indicated on the site plan. Oh, we're gonna do it here. And if we knew precisely where it was gonna happen, then we might be able to talk about things such as sound mitigation and whatnot. I'm not personally concerned about the vehicle traffic and other items. The fire service has signed off on this. Doesn't seem to have any specific concerns about this. And a use permit, it's only valid for 2 years, Andrew? Sorry, I'm jumping back and forth between commission questions.
The code states that, but as the previous speaker this evening who operates a B&B, we have not actively enforced that.
Right, that's not where I'm going though, but, so it's not unlike a high school. Once the high school's there, the high school's there. This conditional use permit has terms and conditions and
it runs with the land.
Yeah, I guess my point is if we were to approve something and then it turns out to be not compatible and or unmitigatable to the neighborhood, then it can be revoked because it doesn't fit, right?
Right.
So there is, and this was brought up before by one of the commissioners, I believe, that this is not a permanent thing. So I guess where I'm going with this, I think first of all, the commission's got to decide whether or not we want to approve the application as submitted, or if we simply want to approve the application for a bed and breakfast, or if we want to deny it in its entirety. I did not hear any real opposition to a bed and breakfast from the audience. I think it's fair to say, as I believe Commissioner Russell mentioned, that regardless of what this body does, it's more than likely going to be appealed one way or the other. Although if we approve just the bed and breakfast, it's entirely possible that the applicant may take that for now and then come back with a modification to special use permit. And at that time, they could bring forth proposed mitigation measures for sound and so on and so forth. So I guess the real issue that would make a decision, at least for me, is do we think it's possible to mitigate, is it possible to mitigate to an acceptable level of noise through a combination of hours of operation and maybe also some fencing like we have done with other projects, and so on and so forth. And I'll just kind of, I'll throw it back to my fellow commissioners then for their thoughts.
Okay. I don't have any questions of staff unless somebody else does. I think John wants to ask some questions of the applicant.
Can I have you come back up to the platform? Thank you. As a compromise, and I know that you're trying to make this a financial win for you, and we understand that. And to balance this with the concerns of the neighbors, could you work with something where it was weddings only and not the rehearsal dinners? You're on. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Obviously, I'm very considerate of all of their complaints. I didn't fully understand it. We have neighbors' kids that use our driveway to come to and from school and ride bikes down it and scooters down it and leave their bike on our property. I guess I just didn't consider their overall complaints, and that's my fault. That sounds like a reasonable thing. They do go later. That was a point of contention where there's control issues. Obviously, my family lives in the house, so in terms of parties coming back from Sequoia, it isn't going to be allowed because I'm not going to allow it. And the times are during the day, and it is 1 2-hour period every weekend, and I do understand that that is a big deal now. It isn't every weekend, but definitely a couple times a month. So that's a bigger deal than I thought. And if that's the recommendation, I think that's something that we can definitely be agreeable to.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a potential question for you. When you say an event on the weekend, are you talking one on Friday, one on Saturday?
Not at all. We estimated during the busy time 2 to 4, and that was a realistic estimate. It's not something we were going to go over.
Per month?
2 to 4 per month. So that's 1 2-hour period, either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Would they ever be stacked on the same
Never.
weekend? Okay.
And never. The main point in purchasing this amazing house was so that we could live there. And this is ancillary to that. This is what we also want to use the property. So it's not going to be stacked because we don't want it to be. We don't want the house to be used. We could do 3 bedrooms and make it a complete business. That isn't the intent. The intent is to allow a few ceremonies every month and a few other small events, if those are the things that are deemed that there really isn't, there's less control on those. Because the reality is of the ceremonies, there's complete control. There is going to be a shuttle that picks them up at a specified time with Sequoia's address. They're not going to have our address. There's going to be a shuttle that picks them up at a specific time, and it's going to bring them back at a specific time. That's it. Their dinner is waiting at Sequoia. Their party is waiting at Sequoia. There will be no celebration. That part is specific. I understand the concerns about the rehearsal dinners completely.
Another question, given your paved area as it exists right now,
Mm-hmm.
what would you conceivably imagine the maximum number of vehicles staying on the pavement, not tandem parked, and not creating an emergency escape hazard, what would be the maximum number you could get without blocking your driveway section, just the bulk of your property?
So unpaved.
Paved only.
And they wouldn't be able to park behind each other?
Tandem parking requires a different level of, and it's only downtown that it's allowed.
Okay. 10 cars?
Okay, and I was trying to get an estimate of potential maximum.
But that shuttle could not come in if I have 10 cars parked.
Okay.
That's just a realist. I think it's more, but I'm saying 10.
And the pavement ends right up there by the carport, and then it
Above
becomes...
the carport, correct.
Okay.
So there's 2 flat parking areas there above the carport, but they're dirt. But they're flat, and I mean, we can park there. That could be, we can park there, but they aren't paved.
And then a question for staff then, do we allow parking on unimproved dirt areas?
No, the criteria in the bed and breakfast ordinance stipulates that the parking needs to be at an approved standard.
Okay, thank you.
That's not verbatim, but that's...
Miss, I have a question for the applicant. Mike, sorry, we're not going to let you off. Do you have a definitive, specific site?
Correct.
Where the weddings are to be held?
On
'Cause
the
it's
lawn.
not on the site, it's on the lawn.
Right.
By the walnut tree.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's basically in the middle of the property. The closest, there's a neighbor right above, it used to be, the Bennett sold off the portion of the property. It kind of, you can see it indents in above it. And then it would be closest to the house's highest. There's a tree, a line of trees in those houses above.
Right.
It would be the closest.
What could you do, aside from, okay, so no rehearsal dinners, or no late evening. We have some weddings during the day, and we'll take the worst case scenario, my big fat Greek wedding, we'll take that, big hoopla thing, but no reception now, just the ceremony. I think it's important to keep in mind. What would you say in terms of how you could, in addition to what we were going to restrict in terms of hours of operation and what functions you could have, what would you say in terms of how you could mitigate the sound, mitigate the noise? What's possible?
I obviously, the property's completely lined with trees, so I didn't understand that at all in terms of how it amplifies.
Can you hear your neighbors? Are you living there now?
Oh yeah, I can. Oh yeah, we have been. We bought it in August.
Yeah,
yeah, I can hear all of their dogs. We have sound issues as well. I can hear like work, and I just don't. I mean,
goes both ways.
Right. It sounds like I cannot hear their conversations.
Okay. Well, if you're all speaking Greek, then it may not matter. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I can enter the fray here, an earlier speaker made reference to, and I think maybe some members did as well, about procedures, revocation of a use permit if granted. It might be, I think it's important perhaps for staff to explain that process, if that's helpful, not only to the members, but to the audience as well, and those people who might be directly affected by the request. If the use permit's granted with conditions, which either from staff recommendations or from those imposed by the commission, if the use is not adhered to those conditions, then yes, the city does have a procedure where a complaint's filed. The city investigates that complaint. According to our administrative procedures, we have to give the party who has the use permit an opportunity to correct those related issues, be they sound, be it traffic, be it whatever the issue is. If after a period of time that those issues have not been addressed and we still get complaints about the same issue, then the city will make efforts to bring the item back before you under what's called a revocation hearing, where they would have the right to provide evidence either in opposition to staff's concern or the raised issues by members of the public, the affected folks. Then at that public hearing, the commission could impose additional, they could not choose to revocate the permit. They could modify the use permit to reflect new issues, or of course they could revoke the permit. That action is appealable as well. So in a nutshell, that is the procedure for revocation should a use permit in a very quick fashion.
Thank you. I mean, my take from that is that there's a lot of due process, you might call it in concentric rings around this. If part of the due process, as I see it, is if the commission were to approve this without modification, then the citizens with sound concerns would have the opportunity to use the due process of an appeal to the city council. They would have a second layer of due process in gathering whatever evidence would persuade reasonable people to believe that it's time to revoke it's time to revoke the permit. So speaking only for myself, I'm satisfied with those elements in play, that there are adequate safeguards for the expressed concerns of the surrounding community.
I'm going to go back to staff on this technical point one more time. If we modified the application and simply struck rehearsal dinners and struck weddings out of the application without adding a prohibition of same, that doesn't prohibit them from doing it, because they would then have a bed and breakfast. And then they could do ancillary activities, the frequency of which would be determined by them. And then should they become a nuisance, then someone could file a complaint. Is that correct? On a technical basis? If they were approved for a bed and breakfast, and we didn't approve the wedding, but we didn't prohibit it, they would technically be able to do that.
No, the use of a wedding in a commercial venture like what is proposed, at least as noted by the applicant, provided to you by staff, staff's understanding. From that commercial component, and not just a member of the family who lives at the residence who has a wedding there because they own the property and maybe it's the son that's getting married, that would be different. I think we would treat that as a one-off. It would be, I think, a reasonable person, even the neighbors would probably think that that would be acceptable. In this case, it sounds like it's much more than just that. So
how does that square with the ancillary, reasonably related and ancillary to overnight use? If they did one a month, for example, we're just silent to that.
The request is ancillary.
I'm sorry, I forget.
The request
right,
for
but,
the events
so
is ancillary.
But we're modifying the application, and we're just striking that component. So now we have an application for a bed and breakfast.
You'd have the authority to do that.
Okay, right. So if we approve the bed and breakfast, they could there's nothing that prohibits them, but I understand from what's been presented this evening, from periodically having a wedding there.
They would be prohibited from doing any commercial rehearsal or weddings at the facility.
Based on what?
Based on that's a commercial use and wouldn't be permitted without being approved under the conditional use permit. But no, they could not hold commercial weddings of any kind unless it was approved under this permit.
Okay. Well,
if you're thinking that since the Herzogs live at the facility and their daughter or relative wants to have a wedding there, well, they can do that on their own. That's a private wedding. It's not a commercial wedding.
I'm sorry. I was misunderstanding then staff's response to my question about this specifically previously, where based upon what's in the report on page 4, that a bed and breakfast, that a wedding is an ancillary related activity to a bed and breakfast, so staff didn't think it was that big of a deal. Now you're saying, no, if they want to do commercial weddings, they would have to have a special use permit for the weddings. Is that what I'm hearing?
It'd be a modification of this existing permit if issued by the commission.
Fair enough. That's a much different phrase. With that information, Mr. Chairman, my recommendation, because I think it's going to be appealed anyway. My recommendation would be to give the applicant a very limited opportunity to try this venture and then to see if it actually generates the nuisance that, folks are concerned about. Just like, we did with the Sequoia and actually other projects that we've had where people raise concerns, we look at it, and we see can we mitigate it. And we can mitigate it through hours of operation. We can mitigate it through what we do allow. We're going to disallow rehearsal dinners. And we could mitigate it through the number of events that we allow. And maybe we only start out with 2 a month, okay? And then if there's a problem, then we have the data. Right now, everything is supposition, and I'm not saying that it's unreasonable supposition, okay? But at the same time, I would hate to simply deny them the opportunity based upon what people think might happen. I've always been reluctant to do that. So that's kind of where I'm leaning. I'm not ready to develop a motion yet, but just for consideration.
Yeah, I was having a problem with, under the recommendation section, make the finding, basically the CEQA, one of the last lines down there, this project is conditioned would not result in significant effects relating to traffic, noise, et cetera, and the proposed use of multiple weekends in a month, I would have a hard time voting for it because I would think significant noise and traffic would be created. But if the use becomes less, once or twice a month for now, they can always come back to ask for an increase. I'd have an easier time voting for at least section 1. And then section 2, make the finding that this is harmonious with general plan, zoning, and everything. I don't remember out of everything that's been said. Did I ask staff, R1 zoning, there's a line in there, it says renting 1 room maximum. So how do we square that with the request for 2-bed? Even though I know with the conditional use permit, we can.
Yeah, it's clear in section 10411, you can request for a bed and breakfast in a residential zone property within the city limits.
But that doesn't conflict, because I read the R.
It does not. It supersedes.
Doesn't conflict.
Yeah.
Okay, the CUP supersedes the
bed and breakfast
zoning.
ordinance would.
Okay.
Because it's more specific.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then the things I would be more comfortable with a smaller use impact, 1 or 2 a month. I would say no receptions, just the quiet, tranquil weddings. No amplified music or voices. Some kind of red curb or no parking signs on Oak Terrace and at the house that is blocking the line of sight. I'd really like them to come back for a 6-month review. We've done that before, but it kind of creates more of a headache. We might just wait for complaints and revocation. Just add to the sentence of owner occupation that if it becomes not occupied by the owner, use is suspended until reoccupied. Allow catering and staff with ample parking, but that's a problem. We don't have before us any parking that's marked out because there's a condition in there, no meals served except for guests and residents. But if they have an event and it's catered, there's nothing speaking to allowing catering. Unless you want to say no meals from the kitchen of the residence. No, it's too short. Limit the number of events. I'd be comfortable with 2 weddings a month. Maximum number of vehicles has to come up. Without parking stalls marked out in front of me, I can't tell if 10 actually is a max. So for that reason, it's almost like we have to continue. Unless they're going to go with off-site parking, I need to see a contract with the shuttle, not just a promise, because it says should. And it really should be a shall. Show us. There is a contract, people will be shuttled, and if that contract becomes null, it triggers a suspension of use until they get that shuttle back in place. Because I didn't see any shuttles on the site, right, Sequoia? I don't know where these magic shuttles are coming from.
Shuttle ferry.
Yeah. And then I'm up to allowing rehearsal dinners or not, because the noise it'll self-police itself when people come back. I guess we wouldn't limit it to any day of the week. I would limit it to 6 or 7 p.m. Noise has to return to normal neighborhood noise. If there's going to be a proven shuttle, a maximum of 100 persons on the site, at least for now. That would either include or not include staff, catering, et cetera, everybody. Just something to think about. So need to address maximum vehicles on site, maximum persons on site, time that the noise ends. I guess we need to add a line requiring porta potties, because there's no addressing bathrooms at all for hundreds of people. And it needs to be spelled out, or we need to revisit this in 2 weeks. But it looks like we have a full schedule in 2 weeks, so. Just some thoughts.
Okay, did you have something, John?
Mike, would you modify that to no weddings starting after 6 p.m.?
But if they start at 6, then how
But
late
you're
do
talking,
they go?
the wedding, you're talking a maximum of an hour.
You could,
Okay,
you could
then
say,
you're out, then you're done way before dark. Neighborhood's back to normal.
yeah, if it was
after
only
that
going to be
time.
two a month, say, to start,
Well,
then I'm not too worried. Let it go a little bit later.
I'd limit it to 4 p.m.
Or
I mean,
dusk.
I think starting out, we should be fairly conservative, that all activities should be concluded by 4 p.m.
I don't agree with that.
Right now, Sequoia, if I heard correctly, right now Sequoia is running a wedding at 11 and a wedding at 3. Did I get that wrong?
It's 11 and 5.
11 and 5?
11 and 5, 11 to 4, and either or 5 or 6 to 10.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Although the circumstances at Sequoia are slightly different than the circumstances here, I would think it would just be in their best interest to create a situation where they're not going to run into problems and then have it terminated. I'll just throw that out as a suggestion. I don't know, the whole issue with the bathrooms and whatnot doesn't appear to be a purview of the city. That appears to be an environmental health component. I even asked the question specifically in querying staff, and so I don't even know how to approach that. Does environmental health have to, I don't know if environmental health has to sign off on something
I was thinking of
like this.
language in the sense of, got to find it now, equivalent to industry standard. There's got to be a standard.
That's what I was hoping there would
20
be.
people requires one portable. 30 people, exactly. There's got to be some kind of a standard.
There probably is, like for Brewfest and things, we have that kind of thing.
So we could guess how many they need, but if they know they have a party of 50 coming, they know, probably Wilkinson's or whoever knows, and they'd say, you need 2, you need 1, you need 3. And then they always have to have the handicap, I mean, the system.
So your language would be toilet capacity consistent with industry standards?
Sure.
I had mentioned something about, I like the 100 people maximum. I had mentioned something about shuttles are required for any parties over 20 folks has to be shuttled, because I think the point was made that, we could have a small wedding party, my totally skinny American wedding or something.
Maximum vehicles
And,
on site.
and, it would just be a real small party, and then they could just do it through a minivan. I could live with that, as long as it comports with the parking requirements that are already in the staff report. Because we have parking requirements, right? Or limitations is already specified. So we're not going to relax those. So as long as they meet these I don't care how they do, as long as they meet these parking requirements. But requiring that any parties over 20 folks have to be shuttled, and then 100 people maximum, including everyone on site, like you said.
I think, I think we should do whatever it is it's going to take to get three of us to agree to it. I'll just say again, as a general principle, and this is, you know, this is from a lifetime of experience in my career and personal life, and that is my experience is when you start backing in a lot of modifications to whatever the system is, you end up with even more unintended consequences. It's just, I think that's entropy. Because for a number of things that I've heard tonight, you know, I have the sense that there are two sides to this issue. One side has indicated a desire to compromise. I haven't heard any commitment or agreement to compromise from those on the other side of the issue, and that's why I think it's the follow-on due process is so important. So, for myself, I'll tell my colleagues that I am prepared to vote yes on this application as submitted.
Are you comfortable with the signage being dealt with by staff? We don't have a signage. They had some recommendations. We're comfortable with that happening. Okay. All right. So just recapping, you're suggesting maximum of 2 weddings per month, no amplified music, no rehearsal dinners, sign package approved by staff, parking to be consistent with what's in the staff report, a shuttle for groups of more than 20 people, 100 people maximum, that's all bodies on premises. Toilet capacity to meet industry standards. And then the only area I'd like to see if we could get some wiggle room on is on how late they can go. I'll go to 5 o'clock. How's that?
No
I'm
rehearsals
looking at
and
Mr.
no receptions.
Right,
Just
there
the
there was only, there never were receptions, so we're no rehearsals. I'm looking at Mr. List to see if,
If I recall correctly, receptions aren't being requested.
right,
Rehearsal dinners
yeah.
and wedding services.
And we're restricting the rehearsals, no rehearsals. And so I'm looking at Mr. List, see if, Commissioner List, see if he would be willing to go to 5 o'clock to start. See if we can get that.
Okay. I'm not sure why some of the folks down there are so dead set against not having rehearsal dinners. I think they're, for the most part, innocuous. If we had rehearsal dinners with no amplified music, probably the only thing we would hear would be the clinking of glasses, because there'll be some toasting going on. And I'm not even sure that I'm in favor of the weddings and everything in any respect, but I don't think you need to single out the rehearsal dinners as something that's really so bad that we can't permit them.
I think my reasoning for the rehearsal dinners is that I think traditionally they're going to be later. Rehearsal dinners are going to be a 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock affair. And then they're more casual. They're not structured like the ceremony is. And so they might tend to be more open-ended, less controlled. And I actually see them, I mean, the ceremony, people are generally quiet, you know, and listening to what's going on, whereas a rehearsal dinner, you know, you could have a roast, and it could get raucous, maybe a strong term, but it's not as controlled. And again, I just think that given the concerns we've seen expressed, I feel that we should be a little bit more conservative. Nothing says if this goes well, they couldn't then add them later. And I only offer that just so you know that I had a reason for wanting to exclude the rehearsal dinner at this point.
Well, I think it should be the opposite. That you don't restrict them and then add them later if it's okay. Let's, you know, add them now, and if it doesn't work, restrict them later. You know, do away with them. But I would also expect that maybe only 1 out of 3 or 4 weddings will actually have a rehearsal dinner at your site. I don't think every wedding is gonna automatically have a rehearsal dinner. Some of these weddings will be very small, and I don't think it's gonna be all the hoopla of having a rehearsal dinner. They might have it downtown at a restaurant someplace where they can get a room, and down there, and then they can make all the noise they want. But I would be surprised if maybe more than half of the weddings would actually have a rehearsal dinner at that site.
I'm fine with weddings and rehearsal dinners, and, if the noise gets out of control, we'll revisit it. I had a question on what triggers the fire sprinkler requirement for staff. Use?
It is unclear to staff as to that requirement.
It's just a request by the department, right?
Yeah, that's correct. You would have the purview as Planning Commission without evidence that there is some code compliance to remove that if you wish.
Okay, so it's not being triggered by anything the city's doing. That was just a request for the fire department to meet current codes.
I don't know the reasoning why that was not
Does
provided.
anyone have an idea what it costs to retrofit an old house like that?
No, but I can tell you that, well, the fire district isn't here to defend themselves, but it's my understanding that similar requests in the county in which the district serves, that neighborhood, where a bed and breakfast has come before the county's planning commission, they have been consistent with requiring an existing home to be retrofitted with sprinklers. But from a building code perspective, it is the opinion of our interim building official that because no changes are being proposed to the residence itself, it does not trigger that type of improvement. So it is really the recommendation of the fire marshal in response to, I'm not sure what, but to request that. But you would have the authority to remove that condition if you wish.
And then they could appeal it if they...
The fire district could appeal the condition?
Sure.
Yeah, correct.
I'm kind of uncomfortable with the huge undertaking of retrofitting fire sprinklers, but everyone needs to be comfortable with we can create a safe commercial use without it. I don't know if you can do fire sprinkler.
I think if the fire service is going to require sprinklers, that we're not going to be able to buck that. I don't think we're going to be able to.
If staff can just make one more comment. It's staff's opinion without actually wanting to look at the actual fire code, but it's our opinion that the requirement to sprinkler is applied to new structures or change in occupancy, and we have neither in this case.
So going for the bed and breakfast is not a change in occupancy?
It's a residential use.
Okay.
It's not a change in occupancy.
It doesn't really trigger that fire sprinkler that it knew?
It does not. If they were holding weddings or events
inside the building,
inside the bed and breakfast, well, then there'd be a change in occupancy, and therefore we would require the sprinklering of the building. But we're not seeing that here, so it could be just language that they added in without
Just an
really.
automatic.
Right.
So the applicant in that case could request verification or could challenge, I hate to use the word challenge, but could go to the fire service, say, is this absolutely necessary, and what's the basis for it? They could do that.
Staff has encouraged the applicant to do
Okay,
that.
all right, fair enough, that's good. What are we gonna do about the darn palm tree? We haven't talked about the palm tree. I think it's wonderful. We should dedicate it. Love palm trees.
If staff can make another comment on that proposed condition regarding the sprinkling, I would recommend that you just add to the end of that condition, if required by the fire code.
That would cover it, sure.
I have a question for you folks down there. That's the official table. What would happen, and I'm not sure I would even support this either, but if we moved tonight to approve the bed and breakfast operation, and then there's gonna be other conditions, but one of the conditions would be that we not allow any weddings or rehearsal dinners. And then assume that the applicant is gonna come back to you at some point and work out a better thought-out program with the conditions and restrictions and guidelines that would eventually come back to the commission here to add those activities. But for the time being, and it might only be a month or 2 months or whatever, prohibit them. Is that doable, or is that
That
just-
appears to be a scenario that this body could make, yes? Unless
I think the
Director has a
conditions that
difference
we
of
talked
opinion.
about, we could end up with pages of conditions, how many people and how much noise and how much traffic and how many cars and what kind of music and if we have music at all. I just don't know if we anticipated, you know, the comments from the neighborhood, and maybe have a chance to have a meeting with some of the neighborhood, the applicant and some of the neighborhood, get together and with a staff member and try to work through these things. But for the time being, just take them off the table. Give
Yeah.
them the B&B and let them come back with a better program.
Under that scenario, then the motion would need to state the exclusion or non-permitted portions of the request, so that the public and the applicant would know if there were issues to that, or if they had concerns about that, they could appeal that component of your action. Under due process that we're talking about before.
And then another question is, if it's gonna be a simple bed and breakfast use, do they need to widen the driveway? It was the events that was gonna trigger all those expenses and cutting the trees. So if we just go with bare
that
bones,
true?
bed and breakfast.
Is that a question for staff?
Is that true? Is that true?
Yeah, long time ago, I thought I addressed that, but I'll address it again.
Just for my own
Yeah, for clarification.
Okay.
It is the ceremonial events that trigger the commercial need for the commercial encroachment. Staff does not believe that the 2-room bed and breakfast and the traffic generated by that would cause the need to widen that driveway encroachment.
All right.
Yeah.
And then just to, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just thinking there's a huge expense of fire sprinklers and widening that road and filling in the culvert and cutting the trees and retaining walls to have these events.
Sure.
But let them at least get going with their bed and breakfast, start building their name and spreading the word.
And one other than spin on Commissioner Russell's, take is, and going back to something we've already heard this evening, is, let's say they get approved as the bed and breakfast. Then let's say they wanted to do a wedding. They could come to staff for a single event permit, special event permit, right?
Correct.
And they could hold that wedding.
That's correct.
And they could see what happened, what the reaction is. And then maybe a month later, they could come back, we'd like to try this again, it was successful. And they could do it again. And then they could build a track record and see if, in fact, it causes any problems. So just to be clear, and so the applicant understands what all of our deliberations are here, if we were to simply approve the application as a bed and breakfast, and if we, just as for the applicant's benefit, and mine as well, but if we were to approve the application for just the B&B, no weddings and no rehearsal dinners, okay? The applicant could accept that as it is, or they could appeal our removal of what they wanted to do. They could appeal that to city council. That'll be up to them. Or alternatively, they can go with the bed and breakfast, and then every once in a while, they can come back for a special event permit and do a wedding. Is that correct? I'm asking Andrew if that's correct. I'm asking Andrew if that's correct, and I'm assuming the applicant's listening.
Oh, okay.
That's correct, right?
Yes.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
So I think actually that's probably a good way to go.
If it appears that the body might be moving towards a motion to authorize the bed and breakfast component only. For the record, it's important that if some of bifurcation of the word was used earlier, if the other request, the event request, is taken off, meaning not approved, then the commission should make findings to support that removal, to support their decision. Just for the record, there's quite a bit of evidence from the public that would lead that language.
I'm not sure that's correct.
I'll make a motion so we get started and throw out your friendly amendments.
Thanks, Brian.
Recommendations. We were just here.
If staff can make a comment, if the commission is looking for what conditions of approval you wish to modify to remove all the ancillary wedding ceremonies and the like, you're looking at modifications to condition number 2, where you're just going to delete "and the operation of wedding ceremonies," and then under condition 2A, that you can delete the entire paragraph under A, where it says 2 parking spaces plus 1 additional space per room to be rented must be provided. Then there's that paragraph under it. You would delete that. And I believe those are the only changes you would make in the conditions of approval that really pertain to the ceremonies. And then the only other change you want to make would be on the findings. Finding number 3, you're going to delete "allow photography, catered rehearsal dinners, and as many as 25 wedding ceremonies on the site per year, but no wedding receptions." You would delete that, and then it's only pertaining to the bed and breakfast. Unless I'm missing something else, Andrew.
Yep. It's going to take some time to strike these out. Condition 5 would come out also under section 2. No need for off-site parking with no events.
That would be appropriate.
Yes, you would delete condition 5.
Okay, so under 2, will they still need a city business license for the B&B? Okay, that stays.
Yes, they would.
Or you just go down the line and see what we strike.
Yeah, condition 6 comes out.
I'll announce it.
Planning division. Number 1, shall be developed and maintained in accordance with CUP, which includes site plans. That one stays.
Condition 6 would be appropriate for removal.
Under planning division.
Yeah, numeral 6. The TIM fee is triggered by the events.
Oh, okay. Just the business license covers the B&B, so no TIM fees?
Yeah, it's a residential
Yeah.
use, yeah.
By the way, NFPA 13 under 9 might be the code for the sprinkler. Unless that's dealing with installation, but I still think as required by code, there was that language about the sprinklering as required by code. We're talking about the fire sprinklers and making sure that's based upon the code requirement.
Wow, we jumped to 6 or something else.
So just add to it.
Because they were at number 2.
Unless required by building code, city building code.
It should be a fire code requirement. There is no city code requiring, I don't think. Fire code requiring.
Unless required by fire code. So, under planning division, number 2, the lettered sections, what would be stricken?
2A.
The paragraph immediately preceding 2A, parking for non-overnight guests, parking for on-site ceremonies
Following
authorized,
2A,
that would come out.
Following.
And then C,
2C would be
stricken.
Yeah.
2C would be stricken.
The sign, 2D
Still need a sign.
stays.
I think from staff's perspective, the applicant, under the code, would be allowed to request business signage. It's the additional signage to announce the address, so someone driving to the site would understand this is the appropriate driveway to get to the B&B. That's the purpose for the smaller address-only sign.
Okay. 2E stays, owner occupied.
Yeah, that's a requirement under 10-411.
On signage, Andrew, though, if they wanted to have a sign with the name of the B&B, that would be subject to the sign permit ordinance, correct?
The max.
Okay, and they can, that can be done with staff, because
Yeah, that was staff's recommendation. If
yeah, okay, I'm happy with that.
Speaking with the applicant, they plan to use historic appearance to the sign. I think it'll be tasteful. Would it be best perhaps just to go from A to B, 1 to 20, whatever?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, is
Oh,
just go
okay.
down the list. So I'm now down to
G or H or?
2L.
2L.
Revised site plan required. Are they not gonna really need that for simple bed and breakfast? Page 10, L, a revised site plan shall be submitted for staff review.
Yep, it comes out.
Because it's talking about showing the egress to Hillcrest.
I don't think we need that.
That should probably be taken out.
Yeah,
Okay.
agreed.
Permit applies to APN regardless of change. Number 2 stays.
Yeah, my apologies. I do see a typo. I've used condition number 2 and twice.
Yeah.
So take that as a notation.
And then what is listed as number 3 would stay? Any new use modification?
Yeah.
Come back.
Standard language we would use
Yeah.
in any CUP.
Standard language, it shows as number 4 stays.
That's correct.
Shown as number 5 would just go away,
Yes.
off-site parking. Engineering division, nothing. Fire department, everything stays, but adding to number 9, unless required by fire code, added to the end of number 9. I think we need to keep everything in 10 except the fire sprinkler modding. That will just, forget it. Just keep it as is. If it isn't needed, it doesn't happen. 11 stays. 12. I guess would stay.
Yeah, most of those are pretty standard
Stay.
fire department
Fire extinguishers.
conditions.
Site address if visible. 40,000 pound load, probably stay. And then the attachments.
Number 10 still deals with a fire sprinkler, by the way, so I
But
don't,
if it doesn't, if it ends up not being needed to fire code, then there's no monitoring.
okay.
Right?
Alternatively, the commission could add if fire code, if required by fire code, after the words fire sprinkler
Or
monitor.
as required by fire,
As
as required by fire code.
At the end of number 10,
Yeah, just to be consistent.
as required by fire code. And then in the findings, due to substantive evidence in the public hearing,
No, concern raised by the public with regards to noise and possible
Noise.
interference of the residential quality, right? This is your last big motion. You should be in on this. You don't let him off the hook. Get him. You started all this nonsense. Yeah. But yeah, but that's really what it is. You know.
due to substantive community concern that the harmony, the neighborhood would not,
For the potential.
for the potential of the harmony,
Potential disruption of the
might be broken.
harmonious nature of a residential neighborhood.
Well, there were comments about traffic and removal of trees, you know, so.
The use of events at the site is not permitted under this conditional use permit until you are free to appeal and you are free to come back to commission to add it to your conditional use permit. Also, that the widening of the driveway would unnecessarily remove many mature trees. The potential for public health and safety with transporting so many people to and from the site necessitates a smaller impact traffic-wise. Okay, I'm liking that. That's the longest motion yet. Thank God that we have video. No second.
Well, is that the actual motion?
Yeah, I was going through it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second.
And staff wants to be sure then that that also includes the modification to finding number 3 up at the top of page 9 for the approval of the bed and breakfast, that you're deleting allow photography, catered rehearsal dinners, and as many as 25 wedding ceremonies on the site, but no wedding receptions. That whole sentence comes out.
I would start that at catered. I don't think we have to deal with the photography issue. That's overly broad, but certainly catered rehearsal dinners and weddings.
All right. Allow photography, yeah.
Because it's a beautiful site
Allow
and people may want to go
paparazzi
up there
on
and
the
take
site.
pictures, yeah.
Under section 3, strike everything starting with catered to the end of the sentence.
Yeah. And you have a second and a friendly amendment to the, I guess you accept that as an amendment, yeah.
For the record, who seconded the motion? Thank you.
Our parliamentarian
Any-
down there.
Any potential amendments? Call for the vote.
I just don't have to worry about toilet capacity or any of that sentence because now we have nobody coming. Okay. Yeah, I'm all good.
Could you
Poll?
poll?
Yes. Member Drobish?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Member List? Aye. Chair Lowry?
Nay.
Member Friend?
Yes.
We got a 4-1. We got a 4-1. I voted no. Yes, I did. So I'd ask the staff explain to everyone present the appeal process to this action.
Sure, based on the last, the action just taken by the commission, an applicant, affected property owner, even council members may appeal this or a component thereof. It could be a condition of approval that gets appealed. That would need to be filed with the city clerk and her office within 10 calendar days. So that is a week from this Friday. Note that City Hall does close at 3 o'clock on a Friday.
Okay, well, that disposes of item 8.1. Please.
I would suggest, and you can do what you want, I think you have an opportunity to work with your neighbors, you know, get together, talk about it, and maybe come up with some reasonable conditions. And I don't think this is necessarily the end of weddings there, but come up with a list of conditions that, and you don't have to give up everything, you know, you have a right to to ask for what you'd like to do, but I think the best way to go about it is to work with your neighbors and come up with a list of conditions that you can come back and eventually, it could be a month or 2 months, come back to the planning commission and take another shot at it. Unfortunately, I won't be here. This is my last meeting. I'm retired.
And I encourage going for talk to your neighbors first, then go for that special event permit and do it, talk to them, and just, it'll work. We'll all work it out.
And that brings us to agenda item 9, matters from commissioners and staff. Item 9.1, ceremonial member Russell retirement.
Let the roasting begin.
I remember.
Staff, does staff have any prepared remarks?
Would I call them prepared? No. It's strictly off the cuff, but I've had the pleasure of being here during this entire tenure. It's nearly 10 years in length, so that's roughly 2.5 terms. I believe you came in kind of midterm when a other member resigned. So if I recall correctly, I think Member Russell has missed, I think, a total of 2 meetings over those 10 years. One of them was his illness, if I were correct, and then the other one was, I think it was, maybe didn't remember that it was a Tuesday night or the packets weren't picked up or something to that effect. But that was several years back. But it's been a pleasure having you as a member. We do have kind of a token appreciation of that. We've got certificate of recognition, and we have also provided you a small gift. Due to your interest in gardening, this is a gift certificate at Front Yard Nursery. So I think
Awesome.
that's very appropriate for
Yeah.
for Member Russell.
Yeah. Good.
I turn it back over to perhaps members would like to.
Well,
say a few-
I only have had 2 years of overlap, but they've been immensely educational. I've learned a lot from this man's wisdom. I'm really going to miss his plant expertise because I'm doing good to tell the difference between a sycamore and a banana tree. So I guess I'll have to go to the bookery and get the most current copy of the Western Garden book I can find. Keep that, banging on the table or something.
Or you could call the former member.
Yeah. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Is it possible to create a subcommittee and force him to stay? I was just very thankful for you really analyze a project and you think about it, and then after we've all gone through stuff, you go, but what about this? Didn't even think about that. And so just your dedication to really analyzing a project is very impressive. Thank you.
What can one say about the Lorax? He looks after the trees. I think Commissioner Russell has brought major contributions to this body under various chairs, and his significant contribution in particular dealt with the plant and the tree list, which has been extremely helpful. And his detail with regards to landscaping and really offering constructive suggestions to applicants, really drilling down into the weeds, as it were, with regards to the landscape and other plans. I think a commissioner, a few words, certainly my polar opposite when it comes to that, probably since I'm perhaps the most verbose member on the body. But always comments and analysis that are insightful and to the point. I think this evening this difficult item. We haven't had anything like this since Toad Hall, really, it seems to me. Or perhaps the Point View project. But really, the insight, terrific, and you're going to be missed on the commission. But we're really glad that Gail's going to step in for you, because we know that's really where you got all your insight from in the first place. So we wish you all the best, and hopefully you won't be a stranger. Try not to lob too many things at us in the Mountain Democrat and tell us how bad we're doing. Good for you.
Thank you. As the rookie, I've only been with you a year, and I have appreciated your wisdom, and have enjoyed working with you.
Thank you. In the 10 years, you know, I'm pleased with most of the votes that I took place and had an opportunity to deal with. And I'm probably most pleased with and maybe most proud of a vote that I lost 4-1. And then it involved a couple palm trees down at the In-N-Out hamburger place. And I was the only one on the commission that supported those palm trees. And I noticed tonight the project, there's a palm tree on that property. It's probably been there 100 years, you know. And I want to acknowledge Pierre also that when it went to the council, you were, I think, one of 2 votes that were supporting the palm trees, you know, and I thought it was silly that we turned our back on that. And, you know, I've got some good words for Andrew, too. I think your staff reports are really on the money, almost always, you know, and occasionally I might nitpick something, but I think you've done it, since I've been here anyway, a tremendous job. There's usually, you cover everything, you do it well, it's to the point, and I think it helps the whole commission a lot. You know?
I would like to thank you for your years of service and for the thoughtful comments that you have made. I watch meetings on television. I seldom come to Planning Commission, but thank you for your service very much.
Are you a member of the fan club? Or?
What fan club?
Mine.
Oh, I guess I'm the only member left, but thank you. And I'd like to encourage you to participate in Community Pride now with your expertise.
I might do that again, too. I used to go to your meetings for a while, but I don't plan on getting uninvolved. I'd like to, if there's a big project coming along that has maybe some landscape issues, I'll volunteer to at least put my 2 cents worth in.
And it's good to get involved in a different, simpler way with the area that you really are interested in. But thank you so much for your service and your comments always.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that we adjourn.
We got 9-2. What's 9-2? Reports from staff and reports for future. 9-2 reports from staff and commissioners, and it used to be an area of requests for future agenda items.
We already know we have 8.2, 3, and 4 from tonight are going to be on the first Tuesday in March. Is that what we're anticipating?
That's the next meeting, yes.
The next meeting, first
And
Tuesday in March?
Also, on that meeting date will be the credit union. We'll come back before you.
Okay.
I'd like to, for a future agenda item, just make a motion out there to reconsider the senior housing, I forget the item number it was, just analyze.
Placerville Commons.
The Placerville Commons, to analyze what potential impacts of the change in language that came in at the last minute, how it might affect the project overall.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Can I go? Yeah, I was just requesting that item.
I have another request related to that. What I would like to ask is that we not have project developers show up at 5 minutes to midnight saying that their money is going to vaporize. Or if they do tell us that, then as long as I'm chair, I'll be happy to make it abundantly clear to them that that's not our problem. I believe we were mercilessly pushed on their financing deadline, and I didn't appreciate it.
I'd like to comment on this as well, and as Napoleon is rumored to have said, don't bring me a problem unless you also bring me 3 solutions. I only have one proposed solution, and I have to say I was really unhappy with the outcome of that project at the last commission. And I'm looking at a document that I think that was part of our meeting, but was for the credit union. And it talks about the process in the site plan review application. And first, there's a development conference, which if I'm not mistaken, is when the applicant gets together with staff and talks about the conceptual aspect of a project that they're planning to do.
It's optional.
It's optional. I agree, it's optional. And then an application is submitted. It goes to planning division, and if it's incomplete, it goes around in a circle until it becomes completed. It goes for city departmental review, then an environmental assessment, then finally comes to the public hearing at the planning commission. I believe in the many years that I've been on this body that I've only been to a developmental conference once, and that was with the Fowlsville building, and Charlie Downs was smart enough, had the insight to sit down with Carol Patton and myself, and there may have been may have been Steve Calfee, if I remember, and we talked about that particular project. And I really think that this process is underutilized. I realize that it's an optional process, but it seems to me when we have projects as substantial as we did with the Placerville Commons and some others, where they're fairly large structures, that we really need to encourage that conference, and we need to have a planning commission or two there. Yeah. And I feel so strongly about this that I would actually want our bylaws modified so that this happens, because it's unfair to us and it's unfair to the applicant for a project to get all this way. And I think this is what you're talking about, Mr. Chairman. The project gets all this way, and then we're supposed to comment on it, and we've got issues with it. And I don't want to insult the applicant in public, and we don't want to put unreasonable demands, but there are things that can be done. And so we do have a process that's available, and I think staff staff has to have some discretion, say, we really need to have a development conference on this. This is something of that significance. I don't know how we do it, but I do know, and this is not the first time this has happened, I do know that the process we have right now doesn't work well for all the parties involved. And at the end of the day, the city is left with it. And if I go back and look at some of the design guidelines, there are a number of things with that project that are actually inconsistent with what our design guidelines are. And so that's all I'm going to say, but we're going to have to do something about it.
I'll go on the record as saying that my colleague and I are in violent agreement on this. I would also say that it doesn't have to stop being optional. I'm where I work, the Office of Emergency Services. We have a process called SEMS, and SEMS is what the cities use to get reimbursed for disasters. And we tell all of the cities, SEMS is purely optional. The only reason you would ever want to use SEMS is if you expect to get reimbursed. So, and all I'm saying is that, if it looks like something is going to be tough sledding when it comes here, maybe we could, as Mike says, have those conversations and make things a little, I don't know, more amicable in the meetings. Not that that's the intent of the meetings. I get that. But we're here at the at the 11th hour, sharing our architectural proclivities, and why don't we do that in the conference room someplace? That's just my suggestion. I'm not asking for a response or anything. Your mic's on.
Kathy Lishman, I think it's not appropriate for two planning commissioners to go and put in their 2 cents worth when other planning commissioners may not agree with them. I'm not sure how the Home Depot evolved to become something that was very different than other Home Depots, but I think that there is a process, and it's really up to staff to work with applicants. So if there was this optional meeting that became required, staff would have an opportunity to work with them before it was designed in something that's doesn't make people happy.
So Kathy, I appreciate that comment, and I don't know why with the Fowlsville House project it happened to be that way. And I can understand what you're saying in terms of well, yeah, you can, 2 commissioners, but perhaps if this body selected them and say, okay, you know, or took volunteers or got a report back. But I've made this observation before. We've had some workshops over the years, and I have made this comment before that we need to have a way to get earlier input. Even the public needs to know sooner about what's coming up, whether it's on the website or whatever, to start getting the comments in earlier. Again, it's unfair to, in my view, it's unfair to everyone involved, and I think we need to figure out a way to avoid it. So I appreciate your thoughts about not having 2 people
And it's just so that we get a project that really suits the city and is really what the city wants, because I know when it comes to the public hearing process, it's really hard to change something that's come along that far, and maybe there's a way to make it better earlier on before it even gets to the commission.
Absolutely, and we laud the Home Depot project as being, you know, like the signature project, and then, you know, we haven't seemed to be able to really get the Fowlsville House. I think the applicant brought that forward, Charlie Down did, but beyond that, you know, it's really hard. So,
Thank you.
Just a quick recommendation, is it a requirement that we put the 2-foot by 2-foot notice of development signs on the property? Is that a requirement or a request of a developer at this point?
It's a city policy.
Policy, okay, so maybe we can create that to 4-foot by 4-foot, and half of it has to be a rough rendering of the proposal, because when you drive by a bunch of text, I don't think those people are reading it.
Okay.
We're getting kind of linear here.
Right.
But,
Good talk, good ideas, motion to adjourn.
Kathy had an opportunity to make a comment, can I?
Quickly.
Okay. It is awkward to tell an architect his stuff's ugly, and I felt like on that project, I was kind of left to do that. And I talked to him after, and he's very proud of the fact that the only other design he did here was Kmart and Sherwin-Williams. And I'm concerned and question where the design is for that project. I feel gut-wrenching. I drive here, 3 or 4 times a day past that site, and I am really stressed now about what's going to go there. I picture this big yellow box, and so I'm just asking if there's still time to comment on the design. Well, okay. I hear that, but they were just talking about how to prevent this from happening, and I know last planning commission, you said that they still had to go through the design process, so it'd just be nice if somebody could weigh in on that.
Well, that was one of the conditions, in fact, the one I added, that they have to bring back renderings to staff that breaks up that monotonous bulwark kind of thing, right? What's that? Okay.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned.